This episode of Watch Out for Fireball's Dispatch is brought to you by our patrons, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Thank you very much. Head on over to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv if you want to see what we have on offer and ask us questions and generally hang out and do whatever. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireball's Dispatch, our monthly Q&A feedback topics program.
Yep, a big old grab bag where we will read your Patreon prompts, have a longer form discussion about a topic that we pick, and then hit your responses to Desperation Month. So anything that you thought about Papers, Please, Frostpunk, or Stalker.
Yeah. The way that you get to ask those questions is by being a patron if you go to patreon.com/duckfeedtv.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you would have got the full episode of last week's Stalker. So if you're listening to this and you're like, what was up with that weird abbreviated episode? That's what was up with it, baby.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of questions.
We do.
Before we get into them, just a couple little programming notes.
Time to scold you.
It's not really a scold.
No.
Well, one, just as usual with these kind of things, it's best to keep them brief.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you need the space to explain the question or explain the topic, that's great. We trust you to do so, but brief is just generally kind of better for us. It lets us get through more questions and kind of makes more space for everyone. And then and we can do this like every episode because it's a nice impulse that people do this. But as a blanket, at the beginning of the episode, here's a blanket thank you to people who have written in questions that are just complimentary.
Right.
We don't want to read those on the show. That feels kind of weird and egotistical. But we do really appreciate it.
Right.
So I don't want it to sound ungrateful, or I don't want us to sound ungrateful because we're anything but. It's just letting you guys know, like, hey, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep those off the episode, but we do read them, we do see them, and we do appreciate them.
Yeah, those are for us. Those aren't for everybody.
Yep. Is how we kind of look at it. And if somehow if you feel like, oh well, I felt like I had one slot for a question, and I used it for that. I wish I hadn't. Ask us too.
Yeah.
Next time, we got you. We're not going to make anybody feel bad.
Right.
We have just a couple of questions that were from the first round that are still left. We're going to get to those right away.
Yes.
So as we mentioned, everybody gets a thing. I mean, I guess it's also worth saying, like, if anything ever makes us like uncomfortable to answer or anything like that, we won't answer it. And if you see that, if that puts you out, please just like let us know. But we just ask something else because we don't feel like talking about it. Like if it's too personal or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes on a couple of them on the Patreon, if the question just has a really quick answer, I've just answered it because it wouldn't really be discussion. And it's like, I don't want you guys to have to wait to hear this. Like, this is just like a yes or no, or like a one sentence answer. So some of those we've just answered on the Patreon.
Yes.
So
cool.
Yeah. Well, still kicking the tires on this format.
Yeah. So I will get us started here with Interparty Conflict. I think that's the name of a show. Gabe? Cool.
Yep, Gabriel.
Yes. Says, you are tasked with proving to someone that video games are more than just mindlessly moving a dot around a maze while beeps and boops play in the background. You don't know anything about this person or their preferences. You have 1 hour and will have their undivided attention for the whole hour. What game or games do you show them and why?
That's hard.
Skipping over the fact that this person's lack of curiosity means that they are not going to be receptive.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't care. Right. Prove me wrong. Make me care. Tell me a joke, funny man.
Yeah.
That's the person in this scenario.
Right.
Yeah, I think that with this kind of thing, like, it is best to go to so like my girlfriend does not like games. Very much, but I like during this Desperation Month, like I told her about, like we were laying in bed. It was before going to sleep, and I was like looking at my phone, doing research or reading about stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Hey, what are you looking at?" And I told her about like Papers, Please, and Frostpunk, which are like games that try to do something and get across a message and put you in a unique situation. so it's like just kind of it's kind of a cop out because we did those, but those are good examples of like the kind of thing I'd want to talk to that person about is like what is because when I think mindlessly moving a dot around a maze, I think of a game that is purely fun,
Right.
So I wouldn't want to show somebody like Rocket League, like, oh, this is sports,
right.
Like if this person understands football, they'll understand this, or understand soccer, they'll understand this. I'd want to show them something that tried to make a point.
Yes.
Or evoke a feeling that you usually don't get from media.
The trick here is, I think falling into a trap where you say, oh, I will show them something that is really story heavy. That is basically a movie. So like you could pull out something like Life is Strange, and say like, oh, this is actually like a really good exploration of like what is almost like a superhero narrative, but also incredibly just kind of human in a big way. And they would say, why wouldn't I just watch this as a TV series? Right.
Yep. And sometimes they would be right.
Yep.
About that. Like, yeah. And the other temptation I think to avoid in that is just to go by quality.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not going to show any of these people Dark Souls. That's right. That's dumb. Like that, because it requires so much like, oh, this is the, again, like just, because the person who I've been hanging around with who's not into video games most is my girlfriend, and she, I was playing Dark Souls, and she noticed that my guy had like a little aura, and she's like, "Why is your guy glowing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm wearing certain rings. They give me stat benefits and stuff like that." And I immediately you just sound like that game does have something deep that it wants to tell you, but it's steeped in the vocabulary of genre tropes and dorkyisms. That make it impossible to explain and not sound like you're getting in the weeds with that stuff. Like, I realized that it would take a long time to make it not just sound like, well, it's cool that I have a +5 sword, as a, number good, hit hard, right. As a monster bad, like, trying to get across that theming is it's a little bit more of a complex carb and requires like a lot of, foreknowledge. Yeah. Where something like Papers, Please, like is like an art game or like Dialogue 3D or something like that, just gets its idea across like really elegantly and directly.
Yeah. Agreed. So, yeah. I think that role playing as the person who inter-party conflict is having us talk to, it'd be like, okay, I want to show that person cart life. And they respond like when Marge notices the kids going to the yard work simulator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it would have to be something a little bit more fantastical than that.
Yeah.
But you could kind of explain like, hey, this is a take on Lemonade Stand, a video game you probably are familiar with because of school. But this is like, what if you actually applied harsh economic realities to that? Yeah. This is what that might look like. So that would be the tact I would take.
Yeah. And we have an hour. Like you could do a whole presentation on empathy games where interactivity is key and it is supposed to make you feel something.
Yeah. Or you could do like one game and then go have lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Knock off early.
Right.
So thank you. Thank you, Gabe. Tom asks, I feel like games are a medium where it's possible to lose yourself in characters or moments in a deeper sense than in more passive mediums, since you have agency over that character's actions. You can feel a direct mechanical connection to an action game character or gain satisfaction from choosing narrative actions. Of the games that you played for the show, which game character have you identified with most, either mechanically, narratively, or both, and why?
Yeah, identification's hard. Right. And it's, I don't know, it's hard to say that I've lost myself really in any given character. I think of a recent example, Dankovsky, the bachelor in Pathologic, as an outsider going into that world with his own assumptions, matching probably my own, going to that town and seeing how that town worked. I think that is probably a standout example for me here recently.
That's interesting though, because it's like that, not that that's not a valid example, but that's also just such a common narrative trope, like just having a point of view character who goes into a strange world. Like that's Alice. And Alice in Wonderland, that's like every character that does that. Like that's just kind of stories.
Yeah.
So like it could still be an effective version of it because the world was good, but that's like a and I think that kind of speaks to a larger disconnect that both of us share with identifying with video game characters. Like I kind of don't. Like I still almost always feel like I'm reading a story about somebody else, and like individual moments of kind of emotional truth can come through. And I play a lot of these games and I do it, I am role playing like a thing. Like it is, oh, like this is the perspective that I want to have through this, or I'm being something close to me, but I'm always faced by situations that are not very relatable.
Right.
So it doesn't really, other than like that very, very building block, like, oh, like this, I'm going into a video game world and so is this person,
Yes.
but I've never gone into a video game world, it still has that layer of abstraction to it.
Yeah.
So, and I understand it's a different mode of how people relate to games, because I know a lot of people do really relate to main characters. Like we'll play through a game and we'll just have this intense sense of identification with a character.
Yeah.
And we got when we did Hellblade a little bit, like we heard about that, stuff like that. And I don't think either of us feel that really strongly.
Night in the Woods has some really relatable characters, I think.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely aspects of multiple characters in Night of the Woods that I related to a lot. Without ever feeling like a one-to-one with any of them.
Right.
Feeling very strongly one-to-one with any of them, which was part of like, kind of stood in the way for me a little bit. Like there's always this kind of picks and, I guess it's that piecemeal nature that makes it hard for me to just like full on identify. But that's a really great example just in terms of like, those are relatable problems and relatable attitudes.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's speaking almost directly to our cohort. So,
yeah. Yep.
Yep.
So that's one. And I always think about I think like something like Torment, which like is a perennial example for lots of things, but it's not like I relate to any situations in that. I relate to the idea of like, oh, I fucking did what? Like I can't believe that the person I am now actually did this terrible, terrible fucking thing.
Right.
That the person I was then would do. But that doesn't mean like on the whole I relate, I don't feel like a sense of relation to the nameless one. In general, I feel a sense of relation to the situation. So,
right. You feel connected to just that incredibly rich portrayal of regret.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's cool. That's great. Like that's a very cool thing, but it's not really about the character. It's more about the individual kind of like choice that it's making me take, and sometimes that kind of feeling of that deep connection to it can be something that you can't relate to really at all. So like I think about something like New Vegas, which the decisions you're making in that game matter, and I love them. Like I love this idea of like, deciding which philosophy you want to carry forward with this like huge population of people. Which one you need to do, but it's not really about relating. It's more about me kind of role playing as a person in that world.
Yes.
And kind of just like making a moral judgment, but there's not a whole lot of myself in it.
Yeah. And when we talk about something having a disconnect, that can sound like it is universally bad because, in general, we praise that kind of connection or engagement. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it speaks ill of anything that we have, mentioned, that's just not the way that we engage with it. Right. Yeah.
It's like, I like that, and I think that's actually not that what we're talking about, like that disconnect is really common for lots of medium, media, at least for me and for some people, like not for everyone, like some people relate more directly, but for me, like, so I think about, we're going to talk about Spec Ops and I'm still making choices as kind of playing as this character while playing that game. But if I watched a movie about the same thing, I might still experience like that sense of not as deep because I wouldn't be making the choice, but a sense of like heightened consequence and stuff. But it would still just be a story, and that would be true of books and movies. So it's a weird way the games like just kind of add a little extra patina of that feeling, even if it's not a direct one-to-one. Like, oh, this is me,
right?
That's me, and that's I think that's also a generational thing a little bit, like. When I look at young people on Twitter and like people listen to the show and stuff, I think people who are generally a little bit younger than me do tend to relate and identify much more strongly with characters in fiction.
Yeah.
Like, who have like, this is my Steven Universe, like persona. Like this is, I am in this show. This speaks to me so elementally. And I just don't get a whole lot of that. And that's wrapped up in like issues of representation and stuff. And it's, I can't apologize for what I don't feel. But I don't feel any dismissal of people who feel differently.
Yeah. I also, and this is just me and my insecurities. I try not to feel vain, and the act of looking and seeking to identify and cling and say, that's me. I see me on that screen. To me, I don't enjoy that. That is not that is not an endeavor that I seek out.
Yeah, it's just not part of the experience.
Yeah.
And who knows how much of that is the job, right? Like, is that we are, fans of video games. Like, I think if we stopped doing the show, you and I would both still play video games, but we look at them differently because of the show.
Yes.
So yeah, good question. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's see here. I've got one that I think can go pretty quick. Taylor writes, if you had to give a game suggestion to someone who had more or less not played video games, what would you recommend? Or along those lines, what games do you consider accessible, in quotes, that also demonstrate some of the cool things video games can do as a form of media? My quick answer for this would be Portal or SimCity.
Yeah, Portal's always a good answer for this, even though like you do have to kind of like FPS controls come natural to us, but I've definitely like read accounts of people who could not do Portal.
Yes.
And stuff. If somebody like does not know games at all, like I always feel like Tetris is like, I've just had Tetris on the brain, but Tetris is really great. Easy to do. Like those kind of puzzle games, really good. Like something like Overcooked goes by really quick as far as just understanding what to do. And the chaos is baked in.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if it necessarily demonstrates like the qualities of games as opposed to other mediums, but it's accessible. Yeah. And then like also sports games are really good for this, I think.
Oh yeah.
Because
you already know the
rules.
Like,
like Rocket League would be good for this. Even if it wasn't great for the other thing.
Right.
Yeah. Here's another one I think might go, just kind of quick, not trying to force a lightning round early or anything.
Right.
But Christopher asked, what older games, Nintendo or otherwise, do you want to see ported to the Switch? The put it on Switch meme.
That's tough because it is a really valid meme.
Because it's a great. It's funny to me, and I said this before too, but like people who just love the Switch but don't ever play it in portable mode.
Oh yeah.
Like, why do you want it on the Switch instead of the PS4? Like, why do you want it on that instead of something else? You could just play it sitting on your couch.
Yeah.
Like if it's not for the portability, what are you doing?
Have you run into that? Have you run into people saying I want this on Switch and also I never play it in portable?
It might be that I'm running in. They're not cross-referenced with each other.
Okay.
I'm running into people who never play on portable and people who say put it on Switch, and I'm not cross-referencing those lists.
Okay, yeah.
But for me, like the put it on Switch is purely about like playing it on a plane or in bed.
Right.
Exclusively. Like that's the reason why I want things on Switch.
Yeah,
that's the thing. That's what the Switch does.
Yeah, and with the death of the PS Vita, right? They ceased production. Like the Switch is the heir apparent to that. Like, just give me every single indie game that has ever been made.
On Switch. So as far as specifics go. I've had a hankering to, and not just for, like some point for the show, but also just in general, replay the Shadowrun SRPGs.
Oh yeah,
those would be cool on Switch. That'd work really well. They're on other stuff. There's no reason not to go to Switch.
Yeah.
So,
in terms of big stuff, like
I guess it's not older too. Sorry, please continue.
No, in terms of big stuff, like a lot of it is being brought over because like Capcom and Square are being really aggressive in their in their Switch plays. Like I would like to see old Castlevania stuff on there, but that edges into like virtual console territory.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The I think maybe part of that might be part of the spirit of the question though too, is like what old kind of virtual console stuff, not just like what old indie stuff. Because I associate the Switch so heavily with as an indie machine. I associate like everything as an indie machine. Yeah. Now pretty much. So as far as like actual old stuff, like I don't know, I would like that Switch virtual console thing, whatever it's called, on Nintendo Online or whatever, to expand.
Yes.
To have other Nintendo systems, and I would like to see some first. Like, give me the GBA virtual console. Like we had some of those on Wii U, but
right.
It would I felt like that kind of started right before the Wii U was dying. Like, give me a very robust version of Nintendo's lesser loved systems.
Yeah, it's a real shame that effort to start bringing over Game Boy Advance, and I think even Game Boy games, right, on the 3DS. The 3DS was a really successful console, but that virtual console experience always felt really weird, and the fact that it was sharing a lot of kind of like top billing with stuff on the Wii U, I think both of those things kind of conspired to make that whole era of virtual console stuff feel disjointed, and that probably put a nail in the coffin that already had many nails in it for them kind of pursuing that model. So I would like to see them now that Nintendo is saying we no longer have consoles and we no longer have portables, we have the Switch, and it is this amazing blend of the two, kind of start over from scratch and do a reunified virtual console. And
way faster than they're doing.
Yes.
Like the speed, that's a perennial Retronauts complaint, but they're right to complain about it. Like
yeah.
the speed at which these come out is very obnoxious. Sitting down and waiting for Wrecking Crew to come out so a better thing can come out
Right.
is awful.
Right.
And it sucks that they do that. I do like just as the outlier who likes these mini consoles, I also want to, I kind of like that the Nintendo Online thing.
Yeah.
I got it to play River City Ransom, and didn't ultimately end up playing River City Ransom on it. Played on other things, but that plus mode where they like start you near the end of the game.
That's great.
That is such a cool idea. Like that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, I want to just go to the last level of Ninja Gaiden. Like I don't want to fucking
unless I do it. Unless I do it for the show, I'm probably not going to get there. So
yeah, not going to. It doesn't mean that I can't.
Yeah.
But that's just like really really cool. Like I want to just be able to start Zelda Second Quest. All those things. Like I think that's really neat.
Yes.
Zelda 2, like these games, like the Zelda 2 one is really great because it starts you with all of the optional upgrades, but none of the key upgrades.
Nice.
So it's kind of just like starting the game with everything. And a lot of people, like I think Zelda 2 is a really cool game, and a lot of people, it is very difficult and people aren't going to play it, but kind of starting with the end game equipment.
Yeah.
Maybe people can play it long enough to see what's special about it.
Oh, shit, man, just give me NES Remix as a service.
Yeah, NES Remix is really, really phenomenal. This is kind of better because you can just actually play the whole game.
I know, right?
It's like an extension of it, but like NES Remix should be part of that too.
Yes.
But it's just like waiting for everything to come out. Like when I looked at that and saw that Super Mario Brothers 2 wasn't on there, I was like, Jesus Christ, like why not? Like it's so dumb.
It's on there
like,
now, just in case anybody wants to correct us.
Yeah. It wasn't at the time we did the show, did the episode, but like all those like old basic games, like waiting for them to come out, you can't just treat it like an event. Every system,
right?
That Yoshi's Cookie comes out and be like, "Hey, we got Yoshi's Cookie." And it's like,
of course,
I didn't care about this the first time, and I don't care about it the fifth time. Like, please stop this. It's so dumb. Just release all your garbage in one day, and then just release the stuff that people want.
Yeah. I just like understand that all of these games are not created equal.
No one person on Earth has ever been excited about Wario's Woods,
right?
Like not even once. So
yeah,
it's a weird fucking game. And not good.
Right.
So
kind of related to that, doing another question from last month, we've got Kellerak, who says, with the closing of the Wii Shop channel being pretty recent, how do you guys feel about the reliance on a digital marketplace for video games? As a related question, do you think there will be tools or methods in the future to help indie devs create physical copies of their games easier? Look into Limited Run Games. They do physical copies of those. It's a neat company. They've had booths at shows we've gone to.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a tool specifically for, like, I don't know if that'll ever be like consumer side.
Right.
Like, I mean, it could be like you could, like eventually there could be like burners for that kind of thing, but it's still, that's not really, in one way that exists now, nothing is stopping a dev from like putting their game on a flash drive and selling a physical piece of media. I think that what differentiates a physical piece of media from a digital piece now is kind of like production quality and extras and kind of that tactile feel, like things that are better, that someone just doing it in house that they have a more difficult time with.
Yes.
It's very similar to being in a band and burning CDs. Like you can burn your own CDs and copy and staple your own artwork. And that's all well and good. And I think that exists now. For any devs that they wanted to do that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a resurgence in fucking like Richard Garriott style disc inside a plastic bag style games. Like that'd be an interesting kind of aesthetic, the same way we've gone back to cassettes and gone back to
but no computer has a disc anymore.
I mean like a flash drive. Inside a baggie, like that kind of aesthetic for things that, mark my words, like that might happen. But the same way you could still just kind of burn your own CDs, like it just looks better. People trust a product more if it has kind of a little bit more of that provenance, and people are going with like Limited Run Games or other kind of those boutique retailers to get even kind of better versions of that. Like give me some Post-it notes and some buttons and stuff, and it's like, I want this little thing on my shelf.
God, that incredibly sexy looking Hollow Knight Special Edition.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
I've got two of them on my shelf. I've got Thimbleweed Park and Stanley Parable.
Oh, nice.
Are the two that I have, and both of those are pretty cool. Like I have a Stanley Parable mouse pad that is like a mandala that says like the end is never the end is never the end is never the end over and over my toilet in my house. So the futility of shitting is underlined every time I use the bathroom.
Yeah. For the first part of the question, I'm not as squeamish about digital marketplaces. I think that Nintendo Nintendo is kind of a black swan event in terms of kind of fucking up something that shouldn't really be fucked up,
Yeah.
And there really hasn't been another kind of huge failure or shutdown that I can think of outside of like Game Tap, right?
Yeah. And it could have, I guess it just depends on how much it bothers somebody in principle, and like for me, it's a little bit like, not tons though, because like I think about, the Wii virtual shop, the Wii shop. I think about those games. Like I still have my Wii. I have what's downloaded. I probably have some stuff that died in the ether that I had up in storage but didn't have downloaded or whatever.
Right.
I haven't thought about that. My Wii's been in my closet through like 6 moves.
Right.
Like I wasn't missing it. And I can understand if somebody is just like actively hands-on with it, having a practical concern, or if it's just the principle, like, hey, I bought that. I didn't pay $10 to rent Lost Winds for 6 years. I spent $10 to buy Lost Winds and own it forever.
Right.
And like, that's fine. Like, I get that. But even like, so I've talked to a couple times on the show about finding my old iPod and being able to download a bunch of old games, including Lost Winds, that have gone away otherwise. And that's really neat. And I'm glad I found it. In no universe was I missing it.
Right.
Like every once in a while I'd be like, man, it's so weird that like that, that I can't play Peggle 1 on my phone. Like that's just kind of gone. Like that sucks. I'd like to play that. Oh, look, here's 1,000 other things. I haven't had the practical yearn for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So in principle, yes, like it sucks. And at the very least, I think that there should be some kind of responsibility to hold on to that stuff.
Yeah.
And keep it and make it easier to do backups of it. Like that's been a thing too. It's like because they know people can pirate it. It's difficult to like do backups of like some of this stuff.
Yeah.
It should be super easy in case you care.
That's one of the things that's really good about Humble. The primary use for it is for the bundles, and their store, runs different sales, but it's mostly like a Steam resale kind of deal. But like anything you buy on there, most likely you get a DRM free version. And I'm not necessarily somebody who is like foundationally opposed to DRM. It can suck. It's, it sucks when it sucks. But like what that means is if you wanted to, you could just download the installer executables of every game you ever bought and put it on a hard drive and put it in a closet. And as long as Windows maintained compatibility with that, you'd be able to just open it up and play it. So like that option exists for you.
I think it's really telling that like a lot of people, I feel like, who are very upset about this kind of didn't do those options.
Right.
Like it feels like the same, and I'm not calling out the person asking us this question. I think that I just see a lot of discourse about this is people who are very upset about the possibility of this and worried about it, quite a bit. Also are now kind of like blindsided or tisking about this whole thing.
Right.
That's like, there was an option for some of this to back it up if like that's what was really important to you. I think the truth is probably that your Wii was also sitting in your closet forever, and you haven't thought about Lost Winds in half a decade.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like it's, I guess I'm less attached to things that I own
than
I used to be. And it's not like a privilege thing. I'm not wealthy or anything like that. I just don't, new stuff comes along like because of those sales. Like the flip side of this is that whole, like, because of Humble Bundle and Steam, like PC gaming is practically free.
Right.
I've said that before. Like if you wait long enough, you will get like insane dollar per hour ratios, like absolutely insane. It might not be the first thing you want to play, but if you're patient, you can play games for almost nothing.
Right.
So it's just very hard to mourn the loss of some of those things. So thank you. And finally, so we have a question here. Or not finally. We're still going. This isn't even close to finally, baby. You're locked in here with us. Brian asked, there are some things he says, just some compliments. Thank you, Brian. And then says, on the topic, has there ever been a game that you didn't get at first but eventually learned to love? The Souls games were that for me.
Famously.
For Brian.
Yeah, famously Souls games for me.
For me, like I was thinking about this question in advance of recording, and not so much like learn to love, but I definitely like learn to appreciate some stuff after. And then like my perennial example for that is like all the Dragon Age games that took me 1,000 run-ups to get into. Like I got Dragon Age right when it came out. My ex-wife bought it for me to like, give you a time frame. Like she was my fiance at the time. got Dragon Age for me. I was like, oh, the spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate. This is so fucking cool. BioWare's back, baby. Played it, got extremely bored. Tried again, got extremely bored. I kept going to those fucking dwarf mines, got extremely bored. And then like on the fourth time broke through that and then came to like it. And then I was like, okay, I'll try the second one and play that. And I was like, ugh. And then like that only took 2 tries, but then I came to like it.
Right.
And never got that where there was a third one.
Right.
But the I can come to appreciate something without actually really, really loving it, I think. I don't think there's anything where I've just been like, no, I don't like this. Oh shit, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that I would like these, but prior to doing them for the show, anything in the Infinity Engine or the original Fallout games, I was just one of those people who knew there was a lot of stuff to like there and decided, yeah, I'm going to not play Torment until I have external impetus to do so. So that would probably be another one of those things. Yeah.
I definitely, can definitely understand that. There's probably some stuff I'm not thinking of too, but like off the top of my head, that's what I got.
Yeah.
For that. Let's move on to some questions from this month.
So Zach writes, what are some perfect games to you? Not your favorite or even one you necessarily love, but what game do you think is a total or close to total success at what it sets out to do? Examples I'd give off the top of my head: Tetris, NES, and SNES Mario platformers, Binding of Isaac, and Hollow Knight.
All good examples.
Yeah. I would throw SimCity on there.
Yeah, SimCity's great. Sims are great. Sims does exactly what it's supposed to do, in like kind of a perfect way, I think.
Yes.
Tetris is like such a good example of like, there's like a video out there I really love, by a guy named Matthew Matosis, about how Tetris is like inarguably a perfect game, like even if it's not the best game. And like he goes through and kind of sets up his definitions for perfect.
Right.
And it's like you could not add or subtract anything.
Yes.
To it. And that's why like it makes it hard for like when I think about like Binding of Isaac, which is the game I put the most hours into, like could you add or subtract something without ruining it? Oh yeah. Like it's built on adding new content. There's lots of content that should be taken out. I think about the NES and SNES like Mario platformers, like they're a closer margin on that, but are they are there things you could take out or add to? Like yeah. Probably like they're not, but like Tetris is a really good example of that because like 3 square Tetris doesn't work. 5 square Tetris doesn't work. Tetris with 8 blocks instead of 7 doesn't work. Tetris is like perfect in like a Fibonacci sequence kind of way.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost mathematically perfect. Please, nobody show me that mathematical proof about how every game of Tetris is bound to be lost because the way the randomization works. I understand.
Mathematically is a,
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean mathematically.
Yes.
Chew on that. So Tetris is a really great example. And I think it's really hard to find something in that tier for me. Like there's lots of things that I do think are close. And it is those like golden age platformers. It is like Binding of Isaac. It is probably even something like, for what they are like, so, doing what they set out to do, so something like Fallout 2, like there's things you could take away from it. There's like some pacing problems in the beginning and end of it, but it is so close to a perfect version of what it's setting out to do. Final Fantasy Tactics is my favorite strategy RPG. Like even after playing other ones, I think that is the most interesting and does the best stuff, even though like Ria Vane's castle is bullshit. Like there are still imperfections in it. So it's really just like close to. Rocket League is another one I've used a bunch of times. Like I said it a bunch this episode. I don't know why I've had it. I think I walked by a bar where they were playing it. Yeah. Just had certain games on the brain. Like Rocket League is a game I don't like playing very much, but I think it's pretty close to perfect. Like, that's extremely good.
Yeah.
For what it is. So yeah, all pretty close. Zom asks, and this is kind of a little bit of a topic, but I think it's an interesting idea. It's essentially kind of a longer question, but basically asking us to say like, what does like in an RPG, like a typical RPG economy, what does that say about a game and its economy? Like what kind of messages can you derive when an economy is based around like kill an enemy, get gold, sell stuff to do that better? Like is there a subconscious statement being made? Is this just kind of like a genre trope, or is this maybe more insidious?
I don't know. I mean, he asked that question, or they asked that question, and I have absolutely, I don't know that I've ever thought about it that way before.
Mhm.
that I thought about, specifically RPG economies being, like advancing an agenda.
Driven by violence.
Yeah, or driven by or loaded with an ideology that I just haven't acknowledged, because it is driven by violence. It is zero-sum game. They have something, you want it by you taking it. They don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is something. The reason why I picked this question, the reason why I think it's interesting is because I haven't seen a lot of discourse about it from video games, but I have seen a lot of this discourse applied to D&D.
Okay.
Because that's kind of the criticism of traditional role playing, tabletop role playing, or D&D, and like a big impetus behind systems that don't emphasize that quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
And like the cheeky way of saying is like, your D&D players are murder hobos. Like you don't really have a house and you go murder to live. And that's what you do. You are Robert Rodriguez as Machete.
Yes.
As a thing. And and it's like, this feels to me, and this is like, far be it for me to sound like, on a side of the culture war that I don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like to me like the kind of thing that only comes up when somebody wants to damn something.
Yeah.
Like, to me, this feels more like a genre thing. Like, do I think like Dragon Quest is really saying something with that?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think Dragon Quest wants to be another thing and just decided to wear some like genre trappings.
Yes.
This to me is related a little bit to the violence topic from last episode, where it's like, if you want to, you could write an essay where this is the perspective on the entire genre.
Mm-hmm. Like
almost every single RPG, with a couple of exceptions, revolves around you killing enemies to drive your economy.
Mm-hmm.
So if it is saying something, it's every single game is saying, like, is it a valid interpretation? Yes. Is it very insightful about the genre? No, because it is such a foundational bedrock of the genre and something that the people who initially made it were 100% not thinking of and not considering. It's just they had other things they wanted to do, and this is the trappings of.
Yeah. And to find the origin of this, you would have to cast back, because video game RPGs come from tabletop. Tabletop comes from board games, it's
like war games and stuff like that, which were literally war.
Right.
Like that was literally just simulating war, and the origins of that are real life conflicts,
right.
Which are war games, which are based on wars. And then that's something where it is literally trying to make somebody else stop breathing so you can get something they have, in a grand way, either whether that's like land or resources or whatever wars are fought over. Yeah. Right. Any number of things. Mm-hmm. So like, it feels like the kind of thing, and I'm not doing this as a call out to the person who asked, but it feels like the kind of thing where it just kind of is too simple of like a carb. Like it can just kind of be applied to almost everything, and it just, that makes it not insightful. And it's the kind of thing, like when I read like someone writing an essay about like a role-playing game, and they're like, yeah, it's just this, like, you go and you kill monsters and you take their stuff. And I'm like, why are you saying that about this and not about this other thing? That happens. Like, you want to make this point about an RPG that has guns, but you're not saying that about Dragon Quest. And that's exactly what happens in Dragon Quest as well. Like, it's just the genre, It is a bugbear that I have with like modern games, like criticism and writing, that I see a lot, is like these kind of ideas that can just be applied to everything.
Yeah. And I don't mean for this to come across like, oh, if you think this is bad, well, I'd like to see you do better. I genuinely be interested to see a counterexample, like an RPG that does have violence, that still engages with a number of the tropes, but consciously swerves away from an economy that is driven that way, right?
So like there are examples where you don't get money, like specifically economy in that sense, but you usually almost you'll make progress at the very least. Like, I replayed Deus Ex and I forgot that, like, I didn't forget, but like one of the things about Deus Ex is that's like has an RPG element. You have a skill system and stuff, but you do not get experience or money for killing enemies. You just advance your goals, and all your experience points are gained through exploration or completing a mission. So there's a way to do that, but it's still contextually like you can boil this down to this whole like idea of like these win state things, where it's like, if I'm on one side of a map and my goal is on the other side of the map, and there's a thing between me and that goal, and I have to kill it to get to it,
Right.
that is conceptually like good. I'm getting a gain by doing it.
Yeah. Is victory inherently capitalistic?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is it, inherently like a bad thing to ever reward, a victory in this? So like in purely an economy form, there are games that don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like, once you kind of expand what reward can be other than just like money,
Mm-hmm.
there kind of aren't.
Right.
Other than like, they're like stealth games and stuff like that, but it's hard for me to think of a role-playing game, that doesn't, and then like cue people being like, Mama, Undertale, at me and stuff. And I'm like, shove that. Stick that up your butt. I'm done with it. Like, that's where it goes now. Put it back in storage. Like, you're going to pull Undertale out of your ass. Like, I can be in storage. But, and even that, like, I talked about that when we did that, like that marketing itself is like, it's the RPG you don't have to kill people in. Like,
it's just a different model. Yeah.
It's just a different model. Like, I may as well just be hitting them with puzzle bullets, Yeah.
Yeah. It's the hitman giving somebody a birthday present idea.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's exactly that. Like, functionally, it was the same. It was just a changed context. So, like, that's the other thing is you could say, like, what if you just took Dragon Quest and ROM hacked it to where enemies, like when you are giving them enough presents to where they just run away when they're satisfied, and instead of giving you money, they give you happiness points.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can exchange happiness points for more presents because of friendship dollars, or something like that. Like, you can change the trappings of it if you want to, but doing so changes the genre and tone so much that it's not something you can just do like easily.
Yes.
So it's like this kind of like, I think that it can say something about it, but it does feel like a stretchy argument that invalidates the entirety of genre.
Yeah.
Which I never have like tons of patience for those.
Yeah.
Let's want to move into the lightning round?
Yeah.
Or move into the topic and then do we do topic at the lightning round?
I forget. I have more horniness for, sorry.
Hello?
Hi, I'm sorry. Disconnected. No, I feel like doing lightning rounds right now.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do lightning round. That's what Cole says when he's horny.
Yes.
Like, hey baby, do you feel like doing a lightning round? Let's lightning round it up here.
Okay. Julie asks, you crash land on a deserted island. You can pick one Duckfeed host to help you survive together. Who is it and why?
Probably Jala. Jala's in really good shape.
Yeah.
And Jala could like climb trees to be a lookout and like get the delicious fruit on top of trees. That's probably my, just because like unquestionably in the best shape of anybody on the network.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You kind of took my answer. The backup will be David. Because he
in the second best shape.
Oh yeah. And also he's like, he's got a survivalist bent to him. He was an Eagle Scout and stuff like that. Like
that'd be a good.
Yeah, he's done a bunch of stuff like that. Yeah.
Good answer to that. Samuel Bear asks, are there any YouTube shows or vlogs that you've been into lately? Any topic, not necessarily games or network related. Anything you're watching, Cole?
I've got one, but I'm trying to look it up real quick. So can you do yours?
Yeah. I've been building these up. I have tons of these, and I keep waiting for slow abject sufferings, and it hasn't happened.
Right.
But I can't remember if I've talked about it on the show, Modern History, where it's like the poodle-haired goon talking about what it's like to be a knight.
Okay.
For like a bunch of little episodes, and he's such like, I love him so much. He's so pure. He is like a historical reenactor, like weeaboo, but for knights, whatever the word is for like Anglophile, castles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he just like does this little like show where he like goes through and he's like, I'm going to talk to an armorer and make armor, but I get to wear it. And he's not like, he doesn't have that kind of enthusiasm. He presents it as kind of studious, but you can see the excitement.
Right.
And he just does, I watched the whole series. He does these videos where it's like, how do you train a horse for medieval warfare? Like, what is siege warfare? What does a peasant eat in medieval times?
I think I've seen I've seen the what does a peasant eat, and spoiler, peasants ate really good food.
Yeah. It's like salmon and bread and like vegetables and stuff, and it looks great.
Yeah.
And then like, what did rich people eat? And he goes through and he's like with these anthropological, dietitians and stuff, and learning about that. And I watched that whole series, and it was like so quaint and fun. Like, he does like, he'll charge somebody with a lance, or charge not somebody, but charge a dummy. And then it'll hit the
it shows his whole trial.
Yeah.
Conviction.
This is what it'd be like if a knight went to trial. Now the barrister would but the the tip of the lance like goes through the dummy's head, and it's not even a good hit, and it's not super dramatic, but it's like at maximum slow-mo. Like little bits of chips of bread, or not bread,
of dummy footing. Yeah.
Dummy, yeah, bread, wood, or dummy filling. And you have the three major food groups, like flying out of his head and stuff. So I think that is an extremely fun, dorky YouTube channel.
Nice. My extremely fun, dorky YouTube channel, you have to be fine with seeing it, or you have to be fine with the ideas of small animals dying. It's this guy named Sean Woods, who does something called Mousetrap Monday. It's this Canadian guy, lives in a rural area, and he has a barn that is constantly, he has horrible mouse infestations. And he also has a fascination with buying or finding old mousetraps or old mousetrap designs. And he kind of like will, explain like, hey, here's how this works. And, let's set it up, or let me modify this to replace a rusted part, because this is literally something from like Germany from 700 years ago or something like that. And then just saying like, oh yeah, like what happens? Or, he tests modern things, like actual, like literally people trying to build a better mousetrap just to see. On YouTube, he doesn't actually show any of the death. And when he demonstrates like, okay, yeah, like this is how this would work, he always uses really cute little stuffed mice. But I just love looking at the number of ways that people throughout history have tried to solve this problem. And he's incredibly pleasant too.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
The last plug I want to put in is for the Epicurious price points series. Have I talked to you about that?
No.
It's like they take they have an expert on like coffee or meat or whatever, and then they do a blind taste test and say which one's more expensive.
Okay, yeah.
And they're all like really good. Like they're like, or most of them are generally really good. Like the person's charming, you learn a lot about these different foods and stuff. And then until all of a sudden there's one for beer.
Oh no! Oh god!
And
no.
The beer guy is this extremely dorky man who is like, just like, hoppy. Whoa, like wow, this is just like really overreacting everything. And I swear to fucking God, like twice during he was like babingo or something, like he tried to bring up
he's doing off-brand Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. He's always like zing zang. Like I can't remember what he says, but it's some kind of like Bart Simpson like wuzzle wazzle. Yeah, it's very like wuzzle wazzle, and he's trying to do it, and it's like not catching on. It feels like even like probably without people in the studio, because when he does it, you kind of like he's not getting the reaction he wants or something. The beer one is like, it's like these are all really good, and one came out for beer, and I'm like, cool,
yeah.
And then it's like 12 of the most intolerable fucking minutes. Like it's worth watching, but God, this guy is a lot.
Yeah,
like just sniff the beer and like, oh my stars and garters, quite an aroma on this heady brew. Oh my God, shut the fuck up. Tell me what makes a good IPA and shut up. I did not need this.
I think I may have seen one of these several years back, but expert tries common food or common thing as kind of a genre. I saw one where it's like a coffee expert who was asked to do blind taste tests of fast food coffee. Like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. Obviously he gets Starbucks, things like that. And it was just really interesting to see, because you drink trash coffee and you think, yeah, this is just medicine, right? But I'll never forget, like he took a sip of McDonald's coffee and said, this tastes beefy. There's like a real meat kind of over there's a real meatiness to this. And I cannot drink McDonald's coffee without thinking, am I tasting beef? Is this meat water?
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'll have to find that too, because that's a different genre than or like a different series, but also the same genre, and it's a genre I like.
Yes.
So into it.
Yeah, I mean, and then just blanket recommendation for, I think it was like Slate or Wired, who does videos for a guy who knows everything about accent and dialect, reviewing.
Oh, that guy's great.
Yeah, reviewing.
I watched all of those.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Yeah, those are just phenomenal. Like I love that dude.
Yeah.
Goose stepping. Something called goose fronting. Goose stepping. That's very different. Because I think he's talking about Brad Pitt in Inglourious Basterds. Yes. I think goose stepping was like goose fronting. And I'm like, I love goose fronting. That's so fun.
Let's see here. Just for fun, What foods do you like that either others don't or are hard to find or regional? One of mine are Hare's ketchup flavored chips, which taste something like a less potent salt and vinegar chip with tomato flavoring. I take it you are either from Canada or you are from near the border, and now I've moved away from there because ketchup chips are Canadian.
Yeah, there's an Office episode about those.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where Jim is trying to get them for Karen Calipelli.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot that episode.
I like Green River Ginger Ale, which is a regional Illinois thing.
Nice.
Same thing, like, and then I also like, and these are more like, these are not regional. They're more just like cheap. So they're not around everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I like those peanut butter taffies. They're called Mary Jane's. They come in red or orange and black packaging. They're like Halloween candy.
Okay. Oh yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are rare because they're like dollar store candy, and you can't always get them at dollar stores even. But they're like cheap candy that I love for my youth.
Yeah. I love regional soft drinks. Like I will fucking destroy a Moxie.
Oh, gross.
I know, right? But
nasty as hell, dude.
It's so good. Yeah. Similarly, birch beer.
Oh yeah, birch beer is good though.
Yeah, I just, you say like, oh, dude, like I really would. I wish I could get some birch beer. And like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, oh yeah, it's like a thing from the Atlantic states primarily. That's where I was exposed to it. And my stepdad, because he's from there, he's like from the Virginia coast. He pretty like whenever he goes there to visit family and comes back, he always brings back just like cases of the stuff because he likes it too. Both regular and diet. It's good. Also, make sure you do not spill it on anything because a good birch beer will irrevocably stain anything it touches red.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like dye a shirt.
Yep.
Birch shirt.
Dirt shirt.
Shirt beer. Nick says, discuss sandwiches. What's the best one you've ever made? The best one you've ever eaten out and about? And are there any funny sandwich stories you have to share? Thanks in advance, Nick.
I don't know that I have any funny sandwich stories. A sandwich that I think about
a tragic one.
What, Mama Cass?
Yeah.
Oh no. A sandwich that I think about from time to time. It was from one of the first times I went to Portland, I think. You took me to a place that sold this like pastrami burger or something like that.
Yeah, we went to Kenny and Zook's.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Kenny and Zook's, which is like a deli. That place is great.
Mm-hmm.
The owners are kind of shits.
Yeah, jeez.
Apparently it's come out, but like I don't know why there hasn't been development on that or anything like that. So I've been to Kenny and Zook's since then. Mm-hmm. There's one in the airport.
Okay,
and it's extremely good.
Yeah.
So
I think I was full to bursting. I was basically ill at the end of it, but it was very good. Yeah.
Them shits is super tasty.
So don't know if it's the best, but I just that is a memorable sandwich that I think about sometimes.
I never like make good sandwiches at home because sandwich fixins go bad at varying speeds. Mm-hmm. Like I like having some greenery on a sandwich or like having sprouts or whatever.
Yeah.
But then it's like, it's very balanced. Like have this meat that goes bad in 2 weeks, this cheese that goes bad in 3 months, this bread that goes bad in 10 days, and this, fixins that go, it's just like balancing that stuff and having it around.
You need project management software to like make sure you
like
always have what you need.
Scrum-witch. like a scrum witch, and I don't want to have the scrum witch, So I usually will go out for my sandwiches. And the sandwich that I have been, recently been most into has been a banh mi. There's a banh mi place by my house, and I love that sweet barbecue pork banh mi.
Yes,
extremely good.
Mm-hmm.
It's my favorite. No good stories about them.
No good sandwich stories. I could tell you about any number of hot dogs.
Yeah, but you fucked it up with the question. You said sandwich and all those hot dog tragedies and hot dog comedies. Hot dog period dramas, all of that stuff is going to be locked forever behind the vault. So,
yeah. I forget who asked the last one.
I think that was me. I said sandwiches.
Okay,
so this is you.
Okay. Adam says, "What's the biggest creative difference between hosts that you're willing to discuss, and how did the show or working relationship change in order to get through the incident?" I don't know. There are probably times where I can think of friction, but it's not worth bringing up again.
Yeah, there's not tons of it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's been a whole lot of it.
Yeah. And it just, it just would just kind of yield and move on. Like, nothing huge.
Yeah. So kind of a non-answer, but like, yeah, it's not really a thing.
Yep.
So much. Connor Burns says, for ambitious young podcasters, what do you feel is the most viable platform to break in and get noticed? Assuming your content is actually worthwhile, original has an audience, which is the hardest part? Also hard, like we're ending the lightning round on a couple like, I don't know, answers, but like, I don't know, like it's a, there are things you can do, but our stock advice is always just like, if you're going to put money somewhere, put money into a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go crazy on other costs and stuff until you know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Keep a regular schedule. And have those things that you mentioned, which is like having original worthwhile content.
Yeah.
And in this scenario, the person already has an audience, so they're not asking about that. So I guess, there's only really two platforms, right? Like it's like YouTube or podcasts.
Right.
For that, like people put podcasts up on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know which one is the most viable. I'm glad that we do the one that we do, even though we might end up getting more viewers, like viewer listeners on YouTube, because of a wider base.
Yeah. It's video and audio are just completely different worlds, Yeah. I don't know about like platform, like be everywhere you can that, makes sense for you. Like we're not on Stitcher because their terms are onerous.
Well, nobody listened to it on Stitcher.
Oh, true. Also,
like, and that's kind of generally like take a look at what you are getting in exchange for what you're putting in for any one of these individual elements, and then kind of decide based on that.
Yeah.
Something that happens a lot is like, even this used to happen with like the YouTube channel that I had before we started like actually kind of combining that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where emails that were like, I see you're on YouTube, like, why don't you join the Blast Network?
I just got one of those today, actually.
Yeah. Like that stuff will kind of come, and that maybe sounds nice, but you have to make sure you're getting anything out of it.
Yep. Which
you likely aren't.
Right.
For that kind of stuff. Like there are examples where that kind of networking and sponsoring can like actually get you something, but a lot of times it's just you kind of ceding some control and getting nothing in exchange and having to run a bunch of ads for a bunch of shows that maybe you don't care about.
Right.
And that's, you can decide how you feel about that, but So as far as platform, as far as to get noticed, I don't know. I don't think there is one that like is like a warmer. It's not like there are open mics,
right?
For podcasting. Like I don't know that there is one. I think that it is just kind of like being consistent and trying to build up your audience and asking people, listen, like, hey, tell other people if you like it. Cross-pollinating is good, like trying to guess on stuff.
Make friends would be one of my big things that I would say. Yeah. And not in a way where it's like climbing or like I'm doing this to network or whatever, but like, find mutual fandoms, make friends and become a cohort of other, of other shows of similar kind of stature to yours. Like it's just good. Generally good, just kind of good. And maybe it'll just like feel better. Yeah.
To have kind of friends and that stuff. It's hard though too, because you have to be careful about like, if you're doing that with an eye towards becoming or of promoting or whatever, that can come across. And that's a real greasy kind of way. If you're just like, oh, I want to get in with all of these other communities, but I'm just going to do it to tell them about my stuff.
Nope, don't do that.
Yeah,
everybody knows when you're doing that.
Greasy and people know when you're doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's not a good answer for this, and I wish that there was. It'd be cool if there was.
Yeah, and also
it is.
This is not like this. This will sound like a flex, but it's not. It's just been several years since we've been at that stage.
Well,
and things change.
Think that's true. So like, even if we did have advice, it wouldn't necessarily still apply. Also, and this is like, I'm not trying to undercut either of us. We didn't do a lot for that. Like we did a short run of Something Awful ads. We guested on some podcast and we put out a show but we're like coming up on 8 years.
Yep.
And we didn't make any money or get any kind of like real exposure for a while into it. Like it just kind of patience and consistency and luck, which is not a satisfying answer because it's not actionable.
Right.
Other than that consistency and patience part. So that would be the best thing. And as far as platform goes, like YouTube does have a wider base. If we were starting over and just trying to get exposure, like YouTube might have been a good idea. For that. It does have its own host of problems.
Yes.
But yeah. Do we want to talk about a topic?
Yes, let us do.
Yeah. Moving on to the topic. So this is the topic section of it, and this comes from Lewis Shaw. Lusha says, do you have any theories about why gamers, going from places like Twitter, Steam, Reddit, etc., often seem to be such rude, disrespectful, ignorant, naive, and entitled, awful fucking people? I think some of it can be ascribed to age, but there are a lot of people who are definitely old enough to know better. Bonus question, do you think there's anything that can be done to fix it? Yeah, so just kind of as a topic, like gamers.
What gives?
Yeah, what gives, gamers? What up, my gamers? What gives? Hey, fellow gamers.
Yeah.
Let's fucking stop.
Are there any stipulations we should make at the front? We are not sociologists or psychologists.
Yeah.
Also,
and the general, like, God, do I hate fucking talking about stuff on the internet. So, like, yes, when you say this, like, if you are not exhibiting any of those behaviors, we're not talking to you.
Yes.
So, like, when we're just like, man, it fucking sucks that gamers do this. And if you're like, hold up, brother, I play video games and I don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, an exception, you know, if you're a person who listens to this, and this is not anything specifically to anyone, who like waits in the wings with an exception to something to spring like a 1920s movie villain with a cape and mustache to spring this exception onto a conversation and then throw a smoke bomb and vanish into the mist because you've invalidated and derailed an entire discussion about trends because you found one exception. I assure you, no one likes that. You will be more popular and well-liked and more successful in life if you divest yourself of that.
Right.
Just stop doing that. Like, I know people who do it. I see it happen just at the mutuals. Like, two people will be talking online and I'll see someone else do it to two other people. And I'm always just like, how have you not learned not to do this yet? You know, an exception does not, like, someone can be like, most birds fly. Or someone can say birds fly. And then if you pop in there and go, hey, motherfucker, penguins. Like, you are not adding to the conversation. You're not doing anything. Like, you're trying to solve their conversation like a math problem. And that's not what conversations are. And you need to stop that. It sucks.
Yeah. Have you seen, so this is kind of a meme. There's a guy who for the past several weeks has been in an ongoing argument to the point where he started writing like 70-page theses. Because a woman, an OBGYN, drew the distinction between vagina and vulva, and a guy kind of Kool-Aid manned into the conversation and said, well, that's just ridiculous because people talk about vaginas, you know, like, well, like, what is this vulva shit? And he's just trying to defend the idea that it is technically correct when somebody describes female genitalia to just say vagina and be done with it.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Like,
yeah, good use of your time and my time.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. But just he's made it his life, his life's work to come in with this exception to an expert in the ultimate form of mansplaining. Yeah, to come out and say, because somebody described that part of a body as vagina once, that is always the right way to refer to it. It's pretty hilarious if you seek this guy out. I'm sure it's been like collected into a blog or something like that. Yeah, has been dunked upon. Yeah. You know, I should look that up. Yeah.
But so anyway, so that is our disclaimer before we talk about this. It's just like, you know, yes, there are exceptions. There are people who play, like, let's not get in the weeds.
Right.
If people who react to this kind of argument with those exceptions feels like it's in bad faith because they're trying to reject the premise of the argument.
Yes.
And like, if you sincerely don't think this is a thing, I don't know what to do with you. Like, I don't know how to react to that. Like, if I find that hard to believe, I guess. You know, if it doesn't, no, it's just, there's no toxicity in this culture. It is simply the same as any other culture. Everything is fine. That always comes off as like, you know, please stop trying to bother me with things that are negative.
Yes.
About life. Like, I don't care about this and no one should.
Right. So stipulated gamers, quote unquote, are not monolith. However, oftentimes people who identify as gamers are.
Yes. There's a toxicity to that label and to that culture.
Yeah.
You know, and what is up with that? Is the question or the discussion.
Yeah. Also stipulated other enthusiast communities are racked with this as well. See also Comicsgate, etc. Which
Brie Larson, you know, death threats. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
So all of that stipulated, talking about people who exhibit these kinds of behaviors.
Yep.
What gives?
So I was thinking about it because this is obviously like in the news recently. Like, I think that it is games because it is becoming a more ubiquitous hobby because it is, as far as hobbies, it is exceedingly easy and common to exhibit it online.
Right.
Like there are more game streamers than there are like poetry streamers,
Mm-hmm.
right? It means that when you have somebody who like is way into games and is toxic, they can immediately get tons of people who are impressionable or malleable to this into the door.
Yeah.
You know, like obviously like they, you know, not dancing around with it. So like PewDiePie is the big example for this because it's in the news, right? But like this applies to lots of different people. Like you get like a Twitch streamer like that, you get somebody like that who's extremely popular, who exhibits toxic behavior, right? Like whether you want
who models that behavior.
Yeah. If you you know, without getting into the weeds of like any kind of culpability, like he is the guy who's like, I ironically do Hitler salutes and I ironically say kill the Jews. Like that's something he does. That's just true. And people get into it because they like video games. He likes video games. He's a popular video game person. They have that in common. It is like a way of like kind of getting that toxicity into people incognito almost.
Yeah. You know, because that, you know, it's part of your Balkan, right?
Yeah.
You know, they just that's just the way that we act here. And the thing about the internet is, it both makes spaces incredibly small, but also incredibly large, right? Like this can just be fine because this is how I act, you know, around this particular content creator or this particular, you know, community. But you're almost always going to be bumping up against and having friction with other people who do not share those values or behaviors, right? You know, because there are access roads, like there are service roads and there are highways, right?
Yeah.
You know, and you got to drive on both.
Yeah. Yep. You know, so you get in this situation where you get like somebody who just likes games, who is like malleable, like in the question, like Lewis mentioned, age. I do think that's, you know, there are tons of people who should know better, obviously.
Right.
I think age is a big one though, because you think about like, I think about myself when I was a teenager and conforming to kind of the norms of a space that I was in.
Right.
Like I would hang out with a group of people who I thought was cool and I would take on their mannerisms. You know, and that happens in real life. It happens in all kinds of spaces.
Yeah.
But the reason why it keeps happening with games is because that is such a ubiquitous hobby, you know, and so easy to broadcast online where these spaces are like simultaneously big and small.
Yeah.
And coupled with like lack of any kind of consequence and anonymity. So like even without, you know, PewDiePie, like you end up with somebody who just like, what's his head? You know, the guy who used the N-word and then someone just said like, people are crucifying him for using a gamer word.
Right.
If you remember that, right? Like, I like video games. This dude is funny as hell. He's good at this video game I like. That's awesome. I feel good when I'm watching this. Hey, I'm communicating with him and his fans in the comments and in Twitch chat. Yeah. We're all having like a good time. Like this is fun. These are my friends. I'm in a social space. This dude drops the N-word whenever he gets killed in Counter-Strike. You know, that's cool. That's what happens.
Right.
You know, and then that is like a slippery slope. Like, there's people who are going to think that's like won't someone think of the children like Tipper Gore argument. And I really don't think it is that outlandish or radical to say like, no, people are influenced by the crews that they roll with.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
you know,
but and this isn't, you know, like this is so far removed from the actual subject matter of the games. Like it's almost divorced from the fact that it's about video games.
It has nothing to do with what they're playing.
Yeah.
It's just the ubiquity of games and also how games are almost unique among the hobbies as having this kind of like hangout culture. Like people don't stream movies and do Twitch chat and hang out and talk about them really. Yeah. Like it, you know, again, Mr. Exception Man with the mustache and top hat and cape is like, sometimes people do. Yeah. Listen, fuckwit. Like, yes, sometimes they do, but for the most part, Twitch streaming is games. So shove up your dick. So like enough of you.
Like this almost inherently cannot be. It cannot be a pearl clutching. You cannot say this is like a Tipper Gore kind of thing, because to do that would be to go out and say the people that you hang out with says nothing about you, right? Like you cannot be judged by the company you keep.
And you, of course you can. Right. Like that is one of those things that people like to throw out. Like it's happening again right now with PewDiePie, where like he just recently today, as of recording, like unfollowed all of his white nationalist follows because he was following dozens of them. Yeah. And like, probably on legal advice, just unfollowed all those people. Right. And when people are pointing this out, his fans are being like, oh, so you judge people by the company, guilt by association, is it? Of course it is. Yeah. Like that, like, yes, it sounds bad, like guilt by association. Like your instinct might be like, oh, no one should be guilty by who they hang out with. But like, you just like, I just fucking hang out with, me and Mussolini down by the schoolyard.
Paul Simon took a really weird turn.
Yeah, he's getting old. Losing it. But it just like, you just think it like, oh, like I just hang out with a bunch of white nationalists, or like any group, like this is agnostic to the group, right?
Yeah,
like if this feels, I just hang out with a bunch of like violent bikers.
Right.
I like them. I am, and just to say like, it's not likely some of that mannerism and like the reason why people hang out is because they share that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff starts like kind of pollinating and things. Like when I follow somebody, a video game personality person,
mm-hmm.
it's because I like generally where they're coming from. I think they're funny. I like the same stuff. Like it does say a lot about me.
Yeah.
It's showing that commonality. I'm not just hanging out. I just hang out with people randomly. It doesn't matter what they are. I just like pick some random people from a hat. Some of them might turn out to be white nationalists. Some of them might not.
Yeah.
Who even knows?
Just yeah. Ignoring the fact that there are comorbidities. Right.
Yeah. Is bad faith as hell. Like it is like a dumb assumption. Like,
right. Yeah. And it's tough, right? Because you want to look at this and you want to say, okay, a lot of the effort seems to be organized, right? Specifically brigades around, Steam reviews, or down to like, the Brie Larson kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, they seem to be organized. And in my head, I know that there is a concerted effort to target disaffected young people who are in this, right? Like there is a playbook. There is a playbook that is saying if you are young and you hang out in this particular place, which is what this is, right? Like gaming is a space. It's a place where people are going to hang out. Like you can be groomed. And when I say that and think about that, I feel like I'm a conspiracy theory nut.
It's very like apt people.
Yeah.
Sounding like, and the trick is, I don't think that there's like a mastermind like there was, or like the American History X guy who's like, yes, let's groom this person.
Mm-hmm.
It's all wrapped up in, this kind of irony, like let's red pill these people. Like it's more of a philosophy than an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think groomed, I think of like, oh, like it's a person doing it. Yeah. It's more like it's a culture doing it. It's like a collective, anonymous collective doing it, but it's still happening.
It's happening. Like it is depersonalized, right? And it is decentralized, but it is still organized around a tactic and a result.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a big reason, the question of like, and yes, it happens with other things. Like, but if you look at like 8chan or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Which is where this shit's happening.
Yeah.
What is, and they're being shitty to, I'm sure those are the same people who like tell Kelly Sue DeConnick to kill herself, and the same people who told Brie Larson to kill herself, or the lady who is in Star Wars. I can't remember her name right now. All that stuff. I'm sure they're the same people, right? But the biggest section of that Venn diagram is games.
Yeah.
Like games is where like a lot of the culture war is happening right now. It's been that way since before like Gamergate, but 2014 was the big flashpoint for that.
Yeah.
Because it is a growing medium. And it growing medium, it's new, it is expanding, it is becoming more diverse. The world is becoming more diverse. I went, yesterday I was in a hotel, or day before yesterday I was in a hotel for the first time in a while, and hotels are the only place where I watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not me saying like, oh, we solved it, but I was watching commercials and they are significantly more like diverse than the last time I was watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were a lot more people of color, a lot more women, people in wheelchairs without attention being drawn to it.
Yep.
Things like that. Like that is significantly a sea change and stuff.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to give those advertisers credit.
No. Like corporations are not your friends. Woke brands are not your friends.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a woke brand, but they're doing it because that's the way the fucking, the tide is turning.
Right. And it's not like, them leading it. They are like, they are purely noticing that is a value that is a value that is gaining power, and that is where they have to be. Advertising is a lagging indicator, not a leading indicator.
Yep. And these gamers, like these 8chan people who hate that, or these people who were involved in Gamergate or what have you in 2014 who hate that, like, I think that motivation is like too complex for us to totally unpack here, but is just this kind of like, I feel like I'm being left behind.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is not catering to me.
I'm being replaced.
And I'm on 18 levels of like just the most shitty, joyless, like humorless irony.
See the Innuendo Studios videos, the alt-right playbook or whatever. Right?
I was just about to bring those up. Like that is actually a great, for anyone who wants to, I feel like those are wonderful.
Yeah.
And like so apt.
Right.
And his initial one about Gamergate, which is about like Angry Johnny or what, I can't remember what he calls it.
Yeah.
But like so has a little, it does like a 5-part thing on Gamergate, and those are so fucking insightful and good, in terms of like understanding this culture.
Yeah.
Like what these people are. As much as, she is not, without fault, like she's a controversial figure in and of herself. Like ContraPoints did a really good video on incels, I feel like. There are parts of that video that people have taken to task, that people have problems with. But the thrust when she's talking about the actual people who are involved in that is really good.
Yeah.
And that's not specifically related to gaming, but again, gaming is this online space where it's very easy to influence lots of young people.
Right.
It is a common denominator as far as having things in common. And it's a deflection too, that like, oh, it's just a gamer word. Oh, it's just a heated gaming moment.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like this instant deflection.
Yeah, it's just games, right? It is simultaneously, and again, a lot of the stuff is just simultaneously one thing and then also another. It is simultaneously unimportant and trivial. It's just a game, guys. It's just a joke, guys, or whatever. But it is also the most serious thing in the entire world.
Yeah.
And it can be both. And whenever pressure is applied on one side, they immediately run to the other.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It is bad faith.
Yep.
And again, those alt-right playbook. Like, I mean, not to answer this whole question with essentially like, hey, go watch these better videos.
And that's where a lot of my understanding was both formed and sharpened. I feel like that established a kind of a both a visual vocabulary for that and just a conceptual one. The things that
we're not so arrogant to say that we can't learn,
right?
From that, because like like we learned a lot from it.
Yeah. Another thing, so in general, it is a problem that most of the internet is a wild waste. However, I think that there is something to be said for specifically gaming related platforms being just basically run by neglectful people who do not watch to tend their own backyard. So you get things like Steam, Valve, who has this thing and says we're going to be completely hands off, laissez-faire, whatever, and people abuse that. These people, the people who really want to advance this cause and dig in and cause other people to dig in, they understand these systems, and they kind of take advantage of the fact that moderation is not in anybody's business plan or in their best interests, right?
Yep. I mean, I would argue it probably is in their best interest. It's just not.
Well, I mean, in short term, it is for long term. Yes, it is not in the interest of the next quarter's results.
Exactly. So again, one of the parts that makes this confusing is that makes it sound like it's one person being like, yes, Steam is the place, but it's not. It's like a hive mind kind of cultural thing. It's these message boards, and that, again, like you mentioned this earlier, is it makes us sound paranoid, but it doesn't take very much digging to find
transcripts of people planning this stuff.
Yeah, transcripts of actual plans and seeing the genesis of these ideas. Like, these people are not, spies waging a secret war. They're waging a very public war on a public message board, and just doing it and just kind of counting on the fact that, like, one, they have, this constant plausible deniability of, like, one, being anonymous, like, two, just being like, oh, it's just games, it's just a joke. Everything we do that's bad is just a joke. They have this, they can hide behind this bad faith kind of thing. But it is coalescing.
Right.
From a group of people who, like, a lot of which, like, and then there's also just the people who are individuals who just straight up say it. Yeah. Who are just like, like, this is, I can radicalize people through this shit. Like, that's stuff that's been in interviews from actual, alt-right shitheads.
Yes.
Have been like, gaming can be used to radicalize young men. Like, it's just, just a statement, right?
Yeah.
So there's still, like, people who will listen to this and will be like, I don't buy it. Like, this is not the case. Like, this is just, and it's like, really? Like, is this all just a coincidence? This is all literally just personal responsibility. Everyone is just choosing to be toxic and harass. Each individual action needs to be just treated on its own merits. If Brie Larson gets told to kill herself about this and gets all this, or like, bring it into gaming, like everything that, Zoe Quinn faced.
Right.
That instead of that being, there being a cause for that, or that being something that is related to games at all, or related to this culture, that is just thousands and thousands of individual bad actors that all need to be individually kind of dealt with and discussed and explained without ever looking at a connection between them.
Yeah.
like that's asinine as hell.
Yeah. So what that is saying, what that is saying is you cannot paint with a broad brush. How broad of a brush? Well, okay. So you got to cover this whole wall of bad actors. Yeah. Here is a single strand. Here's a single strand of hair because you need to address every single person. Yeah. No, like we have to be able, to talk about groups and movements and talk about people who share, language and rhetoric. Like it just otherwise,
they get it from somewhere, right? Yeah. Like I learned, the same way we're saying that, like, hey, the kind of vocabulary to talk about this bad faith stuff. Like, here's a video that we learned a good way to good articulation of that argument, right? And there's several of them. Like, here's some people who've articulated this better than we are. Like, we can point to where we learn those articulations.
Yeah. I mean, earlier we said woke brands aren't your friends. Like, I think about that because I watched a really good H Bomber guy video about it that they put out recently.
Like it's it's okay to get stuff, right? Like, it's okay to like get those things. So we can admit like, oh, this is like where we're getting some of these ideas, or at the very least, like we have the ideas, but these people are articulating them and collating research and facts and support arguments, right? These people who are responsible for this toxicity, why is it so hard to believe that they are as well? And when someone's like, oh, so you're responsible for the people you teach things, it's like, if Innuendo Studios is responsible for the act of me and Cole generally being more conscious about our privilege and stuff.
Right.
Like, okay. Like, yeah, that's fine. I'll give him responsibility for that.
Yeah. Because I see that as help, right? Like,
because it's a positive thing, but there's no universe in which these harassment campaigns or literal murders are like it's such a more extreme result, that you can't, I just think you can't like throw your hands up and be like, yeah, the person who taught you these ideas has no culpability at all.
Right.
If like, the same person, the straw man in my head that I'm imagining who's like, oh, you guys have just, are just parroting these points, from these YouTubers and stuff. And I'm like, well, was the dude who fucking shot the mosque just parroting these points from, Stefan Molyneux and Laura Ingraham and all these just absolute trash white supremacists? Like, if that person, like, are they, just the idea that they have no culpability at all is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening right now because of this most recent tragedy.
Yeah.
Most recent as of recording.
Yeah. I mean, just to say, like, if somebody's listening to this in the future, there will absolutely have been a new tragedy. What we're referring to is the two mosque shootings that happened in New Zealand in mid-March of 2019 by an avowed white supremacist who put out a manifesto that cited a lot of these, kind of fellow travelers that we have spoken about, and also live streamed the entire thing while spouting memes and things like that.
It was wrapped up in gamer culture in a way that they previously have not been.
Right.
So it feels like the kind of lightning rod for the question.
Yes.
And just like this idea that like, oh, you can't, so like, these people are on Twitter, like, oh, like, so PewDiePie is responsible for when his fans go out and do this. And like, there's such like binary thinking that happens that I've noticed a lot of times in like, and I notice it like a lot, like it feels like an alt-right mindset. Like when I find people who are more sympathetic to that idea, have a more binary mode of thinking where it's like, he either has to be totally responsible and like, yes, send him to jail too.
Right.
Or he's totally innocent and he can say whatever he wants and it's just up to people to do whatever they want.
I mean,
and the idea that we can't actually look for any causes or look for any kind of commonalities is just ridiculous because everyone is an individual actor. Like, he can have a little bit of culpability and we can kind of start looking at this stuff and thinking about
like
how it's related.
Yeah. Like he can just be shitty in a way that adds to the din, right?
Yeah. Is he the number one person?
No.
Like, is he as bad as like, is he Stefan Molyneux? No. But it's like he has a factor of reach, by like a factor of 10 more, and like, I just always think when people come back with that, like, oh, you can't do this. It's like, don't you want to fucking fix it? Like the alternative is just,
what they want is to be left alone so they can dig in further. That is the ultimate goal is to never have to change or grow.
Like nothing can fix this.
Right.
There's like literally nothing that can fix this. We can't mess with guns. We can't mess with, free speech, like quote unquote free speech.
Right.
With this stuff. We can't look at the platforms that are supporting these people who are like going through and being like, people from Islam want to replace you.
Right.
Like, this is a real thing. Here's my fake research. Here's a real thing. If you don't do anything, things will get bad.
Yeah.
This is something that, like, fairly mainstream, like, this is something like, Ben Shapiro has said, like, fairly mainstream conservative talking heads have said, right?
Conservative talking heads who are sharing a timeline with, other gamer, who are populating the timeline of the people who are propagating this.
Tom Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, the conservative talking heads. We're sharing a stage with the conservative Tom Club.
But what I'm saying is the notional toxic people who are telling Brie Larson and Daisy Ridley to go kill themselves, their timelines are populated not just with people talking about why Anthem is bad. They've got Ben Shapiro in there. Like, all of this is melding together.
And just the idea, like, that means nothing. We can't look at these connections at all.
I'm gonna make a book recommendation that's gonna make me sound like a fucking Keith Olbermann liberal conspiracy nut or whatever, but it has been a very bracing book to read. It's called "Nothing is True and Everything is Possible: The Surreal Heart of the New Russia," by an author, Peter Pomerantsev. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. It is a good narrative version of kind of just the epistemic terrorism that is happening in modern Russia and, extending back into the Cold War, basically talking about at a state level, what happens when nothing can be true. When you've got kind of just plausible deniability writ large at every level of the culture, so that people can continue doing whatever they were going to do, which is primarily getting what they wanted anyway. Right.
Yeah.
It is a very well-written account that is fucking terrifying because this is a tactic that is shared.
Yeah. Like, you can see reflections of it.
You see it
we're
everywhere.
going through.
I'm not saying if this behavior stems from there. Absolutely not. Please do not take me out of context in saying that. What I'm saying is this is a problem that exists everywhere at every level of society that is propagated and helped along by the conditions that we talked about on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason, again, tying that back to games is because there's just a lot of comorbidity there. And it is a hugely online thing that attracts young men.
Yep.
Yeah. The idea that there's just nothing, this is not worth looking into. There's no connections here or anything like that is just makes me furious. Dislike it. So that is why I think that's a good reason why gamers are toxic. Why they're like low key toxic when they're not doing shootings and shit. It's that feeling of being replaced, that the hobby is moving on without them, they're not being catered to.
Yeah.
It's all these things that we talked about like tons in 2014, like during, when Gamergate was at its height.
Yeah.
Or when it was before, first coming to prominence.
Right. Because it was happening for years before that, and it just kind of reached a head.
And it hasn't ended.
Exactly. No, like that boil ruptured, and it has extended into every single aspect of our lives. So yay.
All those things are true. Like, it is just people who cannot handle, who don't understand on any level that, like, there's infinite pie. If somebody gets a piece of the pie, it's not a zero-sum game. You're not getting a smaller piece of the pie. Outside of the pie, it's like that I Heart Huckabee's thing with the blanket. Like, what's outside the blanket? There's just more blanket.
Yeah.
Like, what's outside of of games? Like, if this game happens, like, I don't want every game to be like fucking Depression Quest. Well, guess what? We're 5 years on from that, or whatever, 6 years on from that, and most games are still about Space Marines killing things.
Yeah.
Everything's fine, and I don't want those games to go away.
No,
that's never been on the table. Something I think about, and this is gonna this is a broader political thing, but it's something I haven't been able to get out of my head for a couple months. Is when I read, and I'm not talking about, like, I'm not making a blanket statement about all conservatives, but when I read something from a conservative that is based around this, I sometimes think, like, what have you lost?
Yeah.
Like, what is the loss that you're not only what are you scared of? Like, I understand, like, what the fear is, what you fear you might lose, but when have you lost? Like, no one, it's never been on the table that in America that the guns are going to go away. Yeah. Like, even if I think that, like, I don't want there to be guns, that is not, I'm not in the majority in that. They will never go away. All that's saying is, like, hey, you can have a gun, but maybe not that gun.
Yeah.
And, like, that is enough to be this, like have this much furor, like, what have you lost with, like, and like any number of these things, right? Like, I didn't come into this talking about it. It's just been on my mind
No,
it's
inextricable. It's all tangled.
Yeah. What have you lost? And what have these gamers lost?
Mm-hmm.
Not a thing. In this culture war, like these people who are very angry about it, who are just like mad about like their being Muslims. What have you lost?
What they have lost is the ability to say and think to think and say those things without criticism.
Yeah, I don't get to say the N-word in public.
Right.
I don't get to just like publicly, like because it used to be like a thing. Like I've talked about my dad before. My dad was like not unracist and used to say things like, and this is like used to say like raghead.
Yeah.
Right. What talk about people and like that was awful, right? Like I'm not defending that. Like I don't like my dad for people who are new to the program. I haven't talked to my dad since I was like 13 years old.
Right.
But like that used to just be a thing, and he would just do it in public, in bars, like him and his friends, right. And also I was 13-year-old and I was in a lot of bars, so that should give you an idea of the character that we're talking about with my old man. But now that would be frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you lost? Like that's what this culture war is over?
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
just
to
like
an extent, yeah.
I can't be publicly shitty.
Right.
Like you just don't like, and everything like with the climate change stuff, like you're not losing it. Like you are taking up the banner of people who don't have your best interest in mind to fight for it. Yeah. And you are in danger of losing. You have not lost anything. You're in danger of losing nothing.
Right.
Well, there's no stakes to this.
What they're in danger of is further introspection. And this is me painting with way too broad of a brush. If I'm wrong about climate change, what else am I wrong about?
Exactly.
Like just at what point do the dominoes fall? Do the house of cards fall? Like if I give that inch internally, everything else is going to have to be questioned.
I hate the fucking libs because they try to make me realize things. Like fucking libs always trying to make me realize. Well, I mean, something.
And also like I don't know, I'm not going out and doing an awful lot of direct persuasion with people who are like your dad, right? It is just by existing.
If you were, it'd be really weird. Like, I think you'd have to tell me that. Like if that's that side gig.
We were talking about this creative differences before. That'll be it.
I was talking to your old man in the green room. Wait, hold up.
Yeah, but by existing and by living to these values, that is a direct assault. It is tremendously fragile. It is tremendously brittle. I cannot imagine living my entire life as the world's shittiest sweater that if one single thread is pulled, the entire thing falls apart.
Yep. Yeah. And it's so interesting that like the contrary, the contrast that is always presented as such, like it was always like, oh, you get red pilled and that's your sweater falling apart. That's your, as soon as Stefan Molyneux, who like I've watched through proxy, like I've seen a bunch of that dude, directly and through proxy.
Right.
That guy's a fucking idiot. And like, that's the dude who you're like, why? Or like Jordan Peterson or whatever, right? Like you look at that dude and you're like, oh, this is the thing that totally should be changing people's worldviews. Like I was a fool and believed in all of these liberal values. But then Jordan Peterson, like, is the person who like unraveled my sweater. Oh. So now, like, I don't know, man. I'm,
and to end this on, maybe a little bit more of a positive note or a more affirming note. Who knows? It's probably important to acknowledge that, however fearful and brittle these, the people who exhibit these behaviors are, there is probably a kernel of pain there, like
totally.
They are not lost causes, in a lot of ways, the hate the sin, not the sinner, right? Any of those kind of like life affirming things, but that behavior has got to go. That outlook needs to be confronted, just like the pain at the center of that needs to be confronted,
and the people taking advantage of that pain.
Yes.
Like that has to go as well.
Right.
Something I was just thinking about that, like, your sweater gets unraveled by Jordan Peterson thing. Mm-hmm. So I read an article, someone in the Slack posted this thing that was like this Guardian piece where they, it's a news series where they sit down people on opposite sides of an issue and have them talk. Right.
Fun.
And they had, a leader of the regional Patriot Prayer and Proud Boy chapter here in Oregon. And like a guy who is in Portland Antifa. Okay. And stuff, and had them talk. And the Guardian guy is setting up a neutral, and like regardless of how you feel about Antifa, right? he's trying to present this as neutrally, and he's explaining the Proud Boys and he's explaining Antifa.
So one of them,
one of them, it's like here he's talking about the initiation rites.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So it's like okay, you get punched by if you want to join the Proud Boys, you get punched by your friends while having to name breakfast cereals, until eventually you take a no masturbation pledge because they believe that when you lose your cum, you're losing your magic power.
Yeah, they are walking around with this like weird Ayurvedic concept of bodily humors.
So they talk about that, and then he presents the Antifa guy. He's like, these people sometimes use violence and property damage to fight back,
but mostly they raise money and do legal work to get people to get protesters off the hook.
Yeah, he didn't even say that, but that's like a big part of it, right? It's like, get these protesters off things. But he's just like he said that he portrayed them in as like the worst possible reasonable light.
Jesus.
Like, they go through this, but it was still not like they believe in magic cum. And like, you don't need to present those two things as equal.
No.
Like the centrism is real, man. And it's fucking poisonous. Like, or I always think about Joseph Paul Watson hucking brain force.
Uh-huh.
Like when you talk about like how you shouldn't be judged by the company you keep, like I'm just trying to imagine being a conservative who's like, Joseph Paul Watson has some really good ideas. I think he's right about Islam. But I always kind of like mute it when you start trying to sell me brain force because I think that's crazy. And like, how does that not poison the fucking well? Like, he's trying to sell you a pill called brain force. Like, if you take enough brain force, it balances out all the cum you lose from masturbating. And this is what and maybe you don't believe in those parts, you just believe in the other parts. Uh-huh. But do you not look at that source with a little bit of fucking skepticism? Like, why would you want to be associated with Proud Boys when they believe in magic cum? And why would you want to be associated with like InfoWars when they're trying to sell you something called literally like brain force? Like increasing your brain force with like ginseng and soy and fucking nootropics. Like, my brain force can be better. Everything he says about how Sandy Hook was a false flag, that's all real, and I believe that. This guy seems like he's really fucking legit. Now on to buy some brain force while I don't masturbate. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Wait, pause, Christ. Stop, re-rack. Okay.
Yeah.
Just try and hold all these things at once, please.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how are you, where is your shame? Like, in being associated with these people, just like, the picking and choosing of just kind of being like, I like the part about the Great Replacement, but I just don't like the part about not masturbating. Like, that's just bonkers to me.
Yep.
So anywho, that's good. Thanks everybody for the questions.
Yes, thank you.
If you have questions for us, the way to get those on the air is to be a patron by going to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have responses to anything that we're going to talk about, including next month's game and the games we're going to announce for the month after that, hit us up at Duckfeed.tv/contact. And these are the people who wrote in for Desperation Month. We're going to read your responses.
Yeah. So we're going to start out here with some follow-up from Gabriel, who says via contact. In the Pyre episode, Gary used a metaphor saying, the downside of living in Portland, Oregon is being close to Vancouver, Washington. I believe you meant the downside of living in Vancouver, Washington is being close to Portland, Oregon.
You can believe what I meant, however you want. I know what I meant. I don't actually have any real hate for Vancouver. Like, that is a real cultural thing here, but it's like, I don't really have any real hate for it, but it does seem like it is. It's like, it feels like Rockford to me, like Rockford, Illinois,
okay,
as opposed to Chicago. Like, it feels like a kind of a mini city. And the things I said about their library being in a mall is true. Just like, I don't necessarily want to battle our Pokemons.
No. And also I not to put words in your mouth, I don't think that you are looking down on people who decide to move to Vancouver because it might be cheaper there. Right.
Totally. Like, yeah. I looked into it. Yeah. Like, if they had a transit system that was would make it work, I would possibly have done it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that stopped me from that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but we can battle our Pokemon another time if you'd like.
I don't know. He lives really close to you. He might take you up on that.
He does have he might have bigger Pokemons. Unfortunately, Gabriel had the misfortune of being the first question after that screed. So now I'm all fired up. But I know that this was meant as a joke, so I'm just keeping that in mind.
Right.
So, moving on to comments about Papers, Please. Sam Bear says via contact, I've only played the demo of Papers, Please so far, but as someone who's worked at a major corporate retail store for the last 11 years, I can tell you that it captures the skill of half-assing your work, but not so much that you get yelled at, better than any creative work I've ever seen. That is a real thing.
Yep. If you're going to be treated like a cog, guess what? I can be a shitty cog.
Yep, act like a cog.
Yeah.
Yeah, cogs are not great.
Nope. Rue writes in via contact, I really enjoyed the Papers, Please episode. I just wanted to check to see if either of you played it on the iPad. That's how I played the game, and I found it really doubles down on just how tactile the interface is. Using your hands to shuffle papers, stamp, tap the buttons, etc., and it really makes it real that you're at a cramped desk that you're forced to work with. It's brilliant, if possibly even more stressful than on PC.
I did not.
Yeah. I've tried it. I did one of those things where I got something on the iPad without really thinking about what the experience might be. And given that I play most of my iPad games in bed, playing Papers, Please before bed does not necessarily comport. I did the same thing with Five Nights at Freddy's.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like it for two reasons. A, I'm not really a touchscreen native. Like, I play lots of games on my iPad, but I'd rather use a mouse and keyboard. It just feels more precise. Also, you're working on such tight margins that oftentimes I would be reading things as I was moving them, and you really can't read something if your fingers on top of it.
That becomes an iPod thing a lot. Actually, in general.
Yeah.
I find with these kind of things, like, so, and there's different solutions for it. Like, I played a game where if like you push down the 3D touch, it like shunts the image a little bit from under your finger.
Yeah.
So you can read it, things like that, but it is just kind of a problem.
Yeah.
You know,
often like sometimes they'll do like an offset drag or something like that, but
yeah.
No.
It is interesting. Moving on to Dan. Dan says via contact, I found this as an iPad app and downloaded it as I love the art style. It takes me back to the Genesis days, but also looks more refined and worked well in the new format. When the music started and I got my first day out of the way, I knew I was in for a treat. A great sound design with a gradual increase in rules I need to check and family dependencies. I found some of the mechanics a little difficult as it wasn't tutorialized as well as I would have expected, which added more stress to the day, frantically looking at the flashing clock and thinking of my sick, cold family. A fun game that I actually enjoyed despite the harsh treatment of questionably innocent citizens, as I felt I had justification to do so. Glory to our Stutska.
Yeah, I didn't think about the Genesis comparison, but like the limited color palette and roughly the resolution does actually call that to mind a little bit.
Yeah, it does have has a nice Genesis vibe. Yeah. I wish there was a good Genesis Mini. I was feeling some Genesis vibes recently.
They're all so bullshit.
They're all bad.
Yeah, like bad controllers is the problem. Like I've picked up one and played with it and then did the other and tried it. Like the Nintendo mini controllers feel like the real ones. They stand up next side by side. Any of the Sega ones feel cheap and garbagey.
The emulators are not good either.
Right.
I had a handheld one I bought once.
Yeah.
And the emulator was just like, you couldn't save.
What?
So I was like trying to play like Phantasy Star or something. I couldn't save. And then it's just like the music was really, really bad.
Ugh.
So yeah, they're just not very good.
No.
So be cool if that wasn't a poisoned well.
Yeah.
Because I would like to complete my little mini consoles thing. I bought they were on sale. I got a Commodore 64 mini.
Oh yeah.
Which the big difference with that one is that you don't have to do any hacking or anything to put games on it.
Oh really?
They just accept it. Like you just put in a USB drive.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm going to get and that's like a system that's a huge blind spot for me.
Oh, it's,
so really
it's a pain in the dick to emulate too.
Luckily, I don't have to anymore.
Yeah.
Like just get some ROMs, throw them on there.
Fuck, man. That like, how much was that? Because that might actually open up some avenues for abject suffering.
So $40.
$40? Not
I think is what that was. And I haven't got it yet, so I have not tried it yet. So this is all stuff I've read.
Okay. Report back. I'm curious about it.
I will. Certainly will. What does this is me?
This is going to be me.
Okay.
Ian says, one thing that has impressed me about Papers, Please is how rapidly people get sucked into the ideology of the world. After the terrorist attacks, I found myself lingering over Kalechian passports and hesitating to let them through. I thought it was better to take the 5-credit hit than risk shutting down the station for the day. Even if the terrorist was not Kalechian, I went straight to the red stamp. My wife, like all of us, tried to avoid sending people to jail. After her first game over, she sent as many people as she could with the guard to meet whatever fate awaits them. I'm curious to hear how the two of you responded to the game and if you found yourselves swept into an ideology or behavior you didn't expect. Cobra Stan is a real country.
I don't think that it is. I just threw in the old Google.
Yeah.
But it's you almost fooled me there. It's not. It's got a nice little Wikipedia entry though. I didn't for this through because I was specifically playing a certain way. Like I was just trying to get to a certain ending, so I was doing the total loyalist. Playthrough. When I played through it, it does like I think we talked about it in the episode. Like it does become a thing where like, hey, gotta get this. Like you start getting annoyed with people that you wouldn't get annoyed with.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not sympathetic to their stuff. So I think that we both kind of talked about that happening.
Yeah.
I didn't play differently because I was adhering to a thing.
Yeah. That's one of the main powers of the game, right? Is regardless of your current values, you are inheriting empathetically this role and bending to the incentives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Ian. Matt says, my wife came to the United States from Colombia in 2014 to pursue her master's degree. Shortly after she came here, we met and got engaged, and then the 2016 election happened. As you can imagine, this was a scary time for us. My wife was reasonably calm about it, but personally, I ended up stress crying in front of my boss. We ended up pushing up our wedding date and started planning our lives around the way our actions would be viewed by a USCIS employee. We weren't comfortable with a large wedding, but we had one. Neither of us believes in the wife taking the name of her husband, but we were afraid of how it would look for her to keep her own name. For 2 years, we would get nervous if we went 3 weeks without going out and taking selfies with friends, since it would constitute a gap in our portfolio. It was during this 2-year nightmare period that I decided to play Papers, Please. This was a mistake. The game ended up being a horrible string of my worst fears. I tend to lean into things that stress me out in art, but this was too much. I won't say I saw my wife as one of the dim shadows on the other side of the glass, but boy did I have a different level of sympathy and aggravation about the events of the game than I otherwise might have. It ended up being the only game besides Amnesia that I had to quit because it was just too damn stressful. Recently on Twitter, Cole indirectly gave me the great idea of playing the game as if you're a Smithers type figure, whistling like a loon while you work, and being completely oblivious to the turmoil caused by your profession. It defeats the purpose of the game, but damn it if it doesn't make me laugh. This game is spectacular from head to toe. It's affecting with minimal aesthetic flash. It feels like it packs the force of a hand grenade into a fly swatter, and I love and respect it. As for my wife and I, 2 years and a 500-page bound portfolio later, we met with a USCIS agent who thought we were adorable. We have our green card, and we're ready to do it all again with a 1,000-page portfolio 2 years from now, and then maybe get citizenship in five years after that. I don't know where this revolving door immigration system the MAGA folk keep talking about is, but if anybody wants to point it out to me, by all means do so. Love you guys. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry that you and your wife have had to go through that.
Yeah, that's dumb.
Yeah.
That's fucking stupid. Like, I mean, not you, just, oh, these people love each other. Prove it. Where's the receipts? Like, dystopian as hell.
Yeah.
So somebody, just as this is a total aside, I went to I told you we were talking in the green room. I went to an alpaca farm over the weekend, and the lady who ran it was very into them for their fur, their coat, and said, "From every animal, a product."
Wait, what?
Like she was talking about essentially making cloth and textiles and stuff like that, and she said the sentence, "From every animal, a product."
Ooh.
And I was like, wow, is that like a dystopian statement? Like, what was the accidental poetry in that? Weird alpaca farmer, like, from every animal, a product.
Yeah.
And that's not really related to this, but just kind of like, whoa.
And by saying that, she made Abe's Odyssey happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was just kind of a gross thing, and just this kind of dehumanization.
Yeah.
Or treated, commercialization of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that this seems to have worked out, and sorry that you had to go through that. And if I find out about a revolving door immigration thing, I won't tell you because I don't want ICE agents to step on my neck.
Right.
So,
Yep. I do like that phrase. It feels like it packs the force of a hand grenade into a fly swatter.
Yeah, that's great.
Good.
Oh, very good.
Moving on to talk about Frostpunk, Bob writes, I love this game as a whole. One thing I wanted to highlight was when you find the cave full of children, I always send them back to the city alone. Yes, some of them may die, but these kids are just a burden anyway, and I need that scout to go further and get me some benefit. But the little note you get after making that choice was excellent. It says something like, the children stare at you in disbelief, and the youngest among them starts to cry, but they have no other choice but to start off towards the city alone. I had to laugh as the game did make me feel bad for my awful choice. But often I could send my Eastern scouts to pick up the kids after returning with a boatload of resources. I'm not a monster.
Mm-hmm.
Keep telling yourself that, bud.
Yes. Yeah, that's we didn't get into all. There were too many of those little individual touches to like get into all of them, but they're all pretty great.
Yes.
Like the game does foreshadow the knife it's going to twist later, in kind of a good way.
Yeah.
Sam says via contact, the protect the seed scenario in Frostpunk is inspired from real life. It's one of those stories I think everyone should know about. During a siege in World War II, about a dozen Russian scientists starved to death while not eating the seeds in the vaults that they had guarded.
Jesus.
And he includes an article about it, which I did not know about.
Neither did I.
Crazy.
Like I know about the Norwegian seed vault that is here to protect our fucked Earth. But yeah, I didn't know that these people made that sacrifice. That the article is harrowing.
Yeah, they should at least eat the stinkweed seeds,
right?
And the cum plant, that tree that smells like cum.
Oh yeah, the ginkgo.
Like there are probably some of them that we don't want in the future.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah,
we're fine.
Just some of them though.
Yeah, just like wipe your ass with the printout of the genetic code for mosquitoes.
Yeah. Just show up and be like, "What's your least favorite tree?" Just
which you like more, Italy or France?
Just somebody comes out like, "What's your least favorite tree?" Just like, "What'd you do?" Hearts go off. Yeah.
Now moving on to the responses about Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl. Gordon writes in via contact saying, this game hit that magical sweet spot when I wound up really feeling like I was living a new lifestyle of a hard-drinking artifact collector in the zone. I knew how to sneak around a circuit of anomalies while avoiding costly fights, occasionally vulturing up the aftermath of a firefight. When my quest giver wound up getting eaten by a pig, well, such is life in the zone. He should have spent more time learning to compensate for bullet drop. Tragically, the depressing life simulator only lasts for 2/3 of the game, but while it lasts, it was exactly my jazz. If I could transfer these mechanics into an open world the size of Fallout, then I would be set for life.
Yep. Very cool.
And we've got a kind of a response that is more about the Fallout comparison later on, but it is something I thought about and we didn't really talk about during the episode.
Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned that when I first came to it, I was expecting Fallout.
Yes.
Like I was expecting like Fallout 3 and it is a very different thing, but yeah, that is, it is a totally kind of different game during that part and kind of really unique.
Yes.
I also wish there were more games like that.
Me too.
Yeah. Benedict says via contact, for 15-year-old me, Stalker was about moments like clawing your way inch by inch through monster-infested countryside after a grueling fight in a subterranean military complex to come across a few people lying down in the sun and listening to their bud play folky songs on an acoustic guitar. It adds to a feeling I have that there's a unique blend of melancholy and despair with a warm, humane touch that is native to Eastern European development. And it seems a shame that a lot of the discourse on culture of origin in games has been focused solely on the difference between Western and Eastern trends. GSC, Game World, Icepick Lodge, and CD Projekt Red are making a fine effort at fixing Europe's reputation for game development.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also talked about that when we did, we talked about Pathologic, but we also like the idea that, things don't just need to be anime, big titty particle effects or Guy Whitey shoot good Stormtrooper. Like, I like the idea that there's more to it than that, for sure.
I was trying to decide if I should feel bad that two of our games in Desperation Month, Papers, Please and Stalker, explicitly deal with Eastern European or, roughly Slavic areas or cultures or populations, like I was worried that we might have been saying something we didn't intend to say by loading it up that way.
Yeah. Like this is, these are big examples of games that deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't really think so. And even Pathologic has that flavor too.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is something real, the thing that, Benedict is talking about is a real thing.
Yep.
Like, that is a kind of a specific mix that's worth talking about.
Yeah. I don't have an answer in mind when I raise that question. It's just something that kind of, poked out at me a couple of times over the past month or so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What does Andrew have to say?
Andrew says, I'm sure you'll make these comparisons in the episode, but what is it about Stalker that I like so much more than a modern Fallout game? I'm not saying it's a better game, but it does do some things better than Fallout. I think it's that the setting genuinely does feel isolating, dangerous, and unpredictable. Modern Fallouts certainly have more polish, but something about the bugs and jank of Stalker add another layer of uncertainty and anxiety. I really dig it. Also, there's something more acceptable about bugs and Stalker that come from a smaller team, and you can sense the creative ambition behind it, and bugs in a Fallout game that are the result of burning out an enormous team of developers to meet an unrealistic deadline. Any other thoughts comparing these two franchises if you haven't already?
Yeah, I never really put together the bug section because I don't think the bugs necessarily feel different.
Right.
In those two games. I think there's just like a level of scope.
Yeah. That's
like a really big part of it. And there's I think it's more simple than that. Like I think Stalker is much more simulationist than Fallout is. Like
Fallout is far more looty. Modern Fallout is because of its kind of roots in Elder Scrolls.
Yep. Modern Fallouts have that. Modern Fallouts have become increasingly less interested in that kind of desperation stuff. With Fallout 4, which is like set even further out when the bombs dropped. And then Fallout 76, which was set very close to when the bombs dropped and somehow is the least desperate of them all. Right. So they just kind of like just change their values to not really be about the same things. Like I can find some fun in modern Fallouts. Like I like Fallout 4. It's not the same. It's not special.
Right.
Like I still probably had more fun with it maybe than Stalker. Like I don't even necessarily think it's better, but there's just more there. But it is very different. Like it totally makes sense to me to have a preference.
Yeah.
They're very different takes on like what an apocalypse could look like.
Like
a post-apocalypse.
As to why you, Andrew, like Stalker more, I don't know that I can answer that.
Yeah, for sure. Like they're it's interesting. They on the surface they seem very similar, but so do like Fallout 3 and Borderlands.
Yes.
And those couldn't be more different either. Like there's just like 1,000 little differences. And Borderlands and Stalker feel totally different. There's just like different degrees of seriousness, like different amounts of humor, different focuses on what you're doing. For sure. Yeah. MG Moose says by contact. Finally, you off boys can enjoy the cream of the Ukrainian crop. I've enjoyed this game ever since it was released. What an amazing setting with the idea of basically a locally contained version of the post-apocalypse. Now, if only the coding was up to par. Unfortunately, we have to wait until Call of Pripyat for a stable game in the series that doesn't need 100 tweaks. With that said, the story of Shadow Chernobyl is the best in the series, as well as having the most unique areas to explore. Excited to hear your responses and everyone else's to this amazing series that desperately needs a new game. Metro has the right idea, but the freedom aspect of Stalker is what makes it unique. Until then, I'll stick with playing Call of Chernobyl for my fix. It's a mod that combines all three games' maps and lets you pick a faction to play as. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
P.S. Not sure if you played with English or Ukrainian or Russian voices, but either way, is there a lot to comment on there? English translations for the Stalker games aren't the best, but the voice acting is quite bad no matter the game. Russian, Ukrainian has good voice actors at least, but hope you're up to date on your Russian underground criminal slang. I am not.
No, the only one that I know is blyat, which would be just because you hear people scream that when something terrible happens in a YouTube video, Russian fail compilation or whatever.
Yep. It is the Russian gamer word.
Yes. God, something about gamer words and boner culture happening in the same 2-month span, I think broke me in a way.
Yeah. It's not good. None of it's good.
Nope,
nothing's good. It's all bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy I played this game. I'm happy that I did Stalker.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah.
What does Harris say? Close us out.
Yeah. Harris raises something interesting that we should have commented on, but we didn't. Not 100% sure if this is for commentary about what you've played, so please ignore if I'm typing in the wrong place. But as someone who spent a lot of time playing the Stalker games, I highly recommend you reading this Polygon piece. And they provide a link to a Polygon article that is kind of a long form piece about the studio, about GSC Game World, which is about how GSC Game World fell apart and how those developers wound up forming 4A Games, the makers of Metro 2033, and the much more dubious Vostok Games, creators of the Stalker knockoffs Survivarium and the upcoming Fear the Wolves. There's a lot of interesting tidbits, but I thought I might mention Stalker too, since it was briefly mentioned on your podcast. Basically, Sergei Grigorovich, sorry about that, the CEO of GSC Game World, seems like a pretty bad dude. He lived a lavish lifestyle while consistently refusing to pay his staff a living wage. In 2012, this led some senior developers to leave GSC in disgust, establishing 4A Games and beginning work on what would eventually become Metro 2033. Over the next few years, GSC employees who begin to chafe under Grigorovich migrated to 4A en masse. Many also migrated to Vostok Games, a company with a much more dubious track record whose sole release since its founding has been Servarium, a project that was originally billed as an MMO FPS and a spiritual successor to the Stalker games, and has astonishingly bad monetization. A quick visit to the game's digital shop shows you that you can buy an AK-12M1 quote premium weapon for the low price of $29.99. So who's actually making Stalker 2? Well, probably nobody. The theory by those in the know is that the game's announcement is actually just Grigorovich trying to drum up social media buzz to secure funding. But nobody who actually worked on the previous games is left at GSC. It's unclear if GSC actually employs anybody aside from Grigorovich, so it's likely to end up as vaporware.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I missed that. Like we do some research for the show. The primary research, we talked about this flow before, but it's worth like rounding up, is to play the game
right,
and react to it as such. And then get those basic demographics. And then kind of depending, I don't do tons of research into the things. Mostly it is a critical look at the game. So the experience of playing it is the primary text for me, like going into an episode.
Yeah.
And then kind of secondary are things I can find about it.
Yeah.
And the reality is like the amount of time that I spend doing that really does depend on how much time I have that week with other stuff for the network. And that week just before Stalker ended up being less than, enough to have this, not make it through my filters.
Yeah.
Or like slip through my filters really. So
yeah.
I wish I had caught this, because I do think it's important when talking about a game to talk about the conditions, about how it's made. I think that is like something that people are waking up to in a real way, and it's important.
See Witcher 3, see LA Noire.
Yep, absolutely.
And any number of games.
Red Dead.
Yeah, Red Dead, shit.
Yep. So so we definitely missed that, but that is interesting.
And
it's unfortunate, because it is, as much as like, just in terms of somebody who is interested in the perspective and kind of mood of these games, like Metro doesn't do it for me. I would like it not, the spiritual successor to this, to not be a real money online gun survival game.
Don't make it an MMO, please. Don't.
Yeah, that is a good way to make me not play your game.
Yep.
See also Final Fantasy 11 and 14.
Right.
So, thanks everybody.
Thank you
for writing in. Thanks everybody for asking questions. Again, to ask questions, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Do write in, Duckfeed.tv/contact. Let's announce what's coming up.
Yeah. So next month, we are going to be playing a handful of games that I'm very excited about. So we're going to be covering Spec Ops: The Line, Halo 3 ODST, and our premium episode for the month is going to be Resident Evil 2 2019.
Yeah. Excited about all of that stuff.
Yes. We've never done a Halo game. Both of us love Spec Ops, and there's lots to say about it. And RE2 is masterful. It is masterful.
Yeah. Yep. We beat, I beat Spec Ops just recently, and I am super happy about that. I'm super excited to talk about it. I love it.
Yes.
I'm setting up the Xbox. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Forrest, who sent me, because apparently there is kind of an enhanced version of ODST that was downloadable on a 360.
Okay.
And mailed me a 360.
What?
To play through ODST. Temporarily, I'm going to mail it back.
Right.
But I did that, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to hook that up today.
Awesome.
And start in on ODST. So it'll be my first experience with the Haloverse. I can't wait to see what the helmets are and learn about those dorky-ass swords.
Yeah. Gary, in a previous episode, we talked about Cortana jerking Master Chief off in the suit. We can't make that same joke
tweet,
again.
though. I guess that tweet is my first. That drill tweet is my first exposure to the Haloverse. And then after that.
Yes.
So we'll be doing it, and of course we'll be doing a dispatch episode of that. If you want that RE2 episode, that is for patrons. After that, we are doing our kind of a grab bag month. We still have a couple more theme months to get through, but because May has extra days in it, or extra Thursdays in it.
Yep.
That is kind of a grab bag. We're going to be starting out with Life is Strange.
So excited about that. I like that quite a bit.
I never played it. I saw some blood curdling dialogue on Twitter, and then everyone assured me that it gets better.
Yeah.
But there is there is some real fucking Diablo Cody shit in the first chapter at the very least.
Yes.
So
it's there.
Diablo Cody is a disease.
Yeah. Anybody who says that it's not there is lying to you. So
yeah. So I appreciate the honesty, and I am hoping to. I am keeping an open mind. I think there'll be a lot to like beyond that. It's been a game I wanted to play for a very long time.
Yes.
After that, we'll be putting out our live episode from Milwaukee. This is we are talking about kind of finding the fun in creative games, creative in terms of things like Mario Paint, MTV Music Generator, stuff like that.
Yes.
Mario Maker.
Looking forward to that. We're going to do our best to share our creations that we do in the lead up to it.
Yep. So you can check that stuff out. That'll be really fun. The reason why we're doing that kind of lightweight game and the live episode is because we have 2 heavyweight games.
Absolutely.
Coming after that.
Yeah.
So another patron request. Life is Strange is a patron request. We're doing another. This is a patron heavy month, but everyone's coming through with like absolutely fire suggestions. So it works. We're going to be doing as a request from our friend Doug, Arkham City.
Yep.
Batman.
The bat. The bat breaks out onto the streets.
Yep. Where does he get those wonderful toys? Microtransaction.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing Arkham City. People who remember our Arkham Asylum episode, there's a lot of like, boy, I wish we were playing Arkham City. Now we got our wish.
Yep. Super excited about that. I was planning it out and I was like, oh man, that's the name of the chapter with Mr. Freeze in it, isn't it? Yeah.
That's going to be super fun. And I right after we did Arkham Asylum, I started playing it and I stopped just because I was like, we're going to do this at some point, but it is really fun. It's a great open world game. And one of our first like purely open, I mean, we keep doing things that are kind of open world games.
Right.
We're approaching like open world. Like eventually we just have to do like GTA something
right.
to actually totally check that off. But this is circling it because it is like very much an open world game.
Yes.
And then our premium episode, and then like this is like number 1 on the list of games that like I know I would fucking love that I just have not played. And there's no reason for me not to have. I just haven't done it. Like I have it. I'm just like, I can't play anything new. I have to play old things. But I'm so fucking excited about this. The premium episode for May is Hitman 2016.
Oh yeah. The episodic Hitman.
Yep.
Going to Paris, going to Sarajevo.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm gonna snipe. I'm going to murder some people.
I'm going to poison some folks.
And murder people.
Yeah.
Poison some folks. I'm looking forward to doing all of it. This series has been like one of these huge blind spots that I know is just like, oh, I would love these games. I just haven't taken the plunge. And I'm so grateful to take the plunge.
Yes.
So also a patron request, but again, like one that is absolutely in line with what we want to do.
Yes.
That's going to be the premium episode for that month. So that'll be for patrons. And really, really excited.
Yeah. So jazzed about it. I did a little bit of Hitman 2016 for a streaming event a while back. It's fucking great. You know?
Can't wait.
Yeah.
I almost literally cannot wait. So
you could just start playing it. I don't know how
I could, but I got to play some. I got to get Master Chief ain't going to jerk himself off. I could, but I can't leave Master Chief. Like, what if he, what if he starts joining the Proud Boys if I don't jerk him off? I gotta make sure I get his magic come out so he can't have the strength to carry on the Aryan race, So gotta get him coming.
Yeah.
Hits keep coming. They don't stop coming. If you have anything to say about those games though, it is Duckfeed.tv/contact.
Yep.
And ratings, reviews, all that stuff is very useful. We've plugged the Patreon a bunch, but it's been doing awesome. If you're listening to this, if you are a patron, you're on the $5 feed. By now you will have gotten the first, or very close to having the first episode of Unfilmable.
Yep.
Our new show on that. So just your generosity has been awesome. And we're really happy with the direction the network's going. So
yeah, I don't have anything to add on top of that. Tell your friends about the show. That is primarily how we grow. It always has been word of mouth. And as always, come back next time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.